my name is Martin Robles, and I'm part of BlueSpecs, a member of IoT CSA, and also a CSA that is actively engaged with NGIoT next generation RIAs. Most of you have met me virtually, so it's a pleasure to finally see you, or eventually see your faces when cameras are on. Joining me is Sam Jones and Suska, as well as Tanya, our CEO, who will give the opening words. So I would believe, not to get behind our kind of tight agenda, I'll pass on to Tanya to make the introduction of the relevance of this event, and then I will go through the operational stuff and dynamic of this workshop. So Tanya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martin. And as you say, it's very much a pleasure to be here at one of the, not exactly final event, but certainly one of the events that's going to mark the closing of some of the work that's happened over the past months and indeed even years. It's been quite a challenging couple of years to deliver this initiative. It was very ambitious, and in fact, it's I think been an opportunity for all of us to really reflect on what the next stage of the cloud edge continuum is going to be. Way back, or what seems like a lifetime ago, in September, there was a survey launched asking you all what you thought your main challenges were in relation to developing research and innovation actions in this arena. And you mentioned three things. First of all, market challenges. Secondly, technical challenges. And thirdly, impact challenges. And the market challenges covered three very distinct areas of activity. First of all, defining the roadmap to market application. So understanding what the end game was, what was it that we wanted to achieve within the market? Where was it that we were going to add value the most? Secondly, actually engaging market actors that were going to be adopting these technologies at earlier stages of the design process. So making sure they understood what their role was in actually configuring and defining the functionality of the applications. And the third, which is in fact going to be the purpose and the focus of this particular workshop, is ensuring that there were opportunities to reuse the components that have been developed over the past years. And this is something that I think that is also going to have a further link to the impacts and the other two areas. So in relation to technical and impact challenges, the degree to which we're able to actually identify which components are best put at the disposal of the community, and to provide the channels for the community to take those up, to understand elements that can continue to be improved, and to make sure that all the effort, all the expertise that has gone into developing them is reused. I think that says it all for something that's been funded with European money. All too often, I think that we've been involved in initiatives over not just within the next generation IoT initiatives, but in many others, where something's developed, something is really unique and has drawn from highly sophisticated knowledge, and then it hasn't really been able to be used or been adopted beyond a very narrow, specific case of stakeholders. I think this workshop is an opportunity to make sure that that doesn't happen, that there is, a horrible word, but there's cross-fertilization across different domains, and that the efforts and the investments that have been made already can continue to provide results and impact into the future. So Martin, I think that those are the key messages that we wanted to get across today, to really encourage everyone to provide their opinions, their perspectives, and make sure that this is done on the best footing possible, and that the results of the work that has been undertaken, but also will continue to be undertaken by most of you in the coming months, can really have that wider impact. So without further ado, really wish you a fruitful workshop and looking forward to seeing the outputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Well, as Tanya mentioned, also it has joined us, just to mention, John Soldatos, which is also a partner from IoT. He'll be also very kindly helping to coordinate this simultaneous workshops. So welcome, John. Simply to cover what Tanya mentioned, as you know, you are all members of a different RIA projects within the next generation IoT. And the objective at what we have settled for today was to share short extracts, which you have very kindly produced, to showcase how the reusability plans were developed for the components of each of your use cases. We have from 1 to 2 use cases per project, and they've been distributed according to the theme and also the scope. So if Suska, could you share the agenda so I can go over the workshop dynamic? I don't know if you guys have no, like, oh, that's wonderful. Yes, exactly. So the idea will be to have this 2 hours and 30 minutes. Maybe we can make it shorter. We have some margin there for today's workshop. The idea is that this will be the main room, and we have 2 separate rooms, room number 1, number 2. The 3 rooms will be recorded. In the first room, I'll be Martin Robles, I'll be coordinating, and the second room, John Soldatos will. Suska will remain here in the main room in case someone loses connectivity or wants to join. So what we expect to do is we will create both breakout rooms, and only the speakers will be assigned to them. And then each one of you can join whichever room we prefer. And then the dynamic in each group, in each room will be the same. Use cases, authors will present for about 10 minutes, and there will be the space for Q&A and feedback from the authors among themselves, and also from those who will be attending those rooms. The idea is to try to understand which was the scope of each project tackling the same problem, and to find, if possible, any common grounds or takeaways from each one's experience. So after the first room, which in this case, room number 1 will have IntellioT healthcare use case with Anka and Alexis presenting, and also smart safety of Focus pilots from Assist-IoT with Piotr. So that will take place in in room number 1, sorry, so everybody can take a look at which one you want to join. And in room number 2, which we coordinated by John, you will have VEDLIoT and NGIoT, with the presentations by René and Clémence. So VEDLIoT will be an heterogeneous hardware platform for accelerated IoT, and NGIoT repositioning wireless micro-edge condition sensing for rail health to other use cases.
So I'm Anka from Philips Research, and together with my colleague Alexis, I will present the use case 2 of IntellioT project, which is the healthcare. So in this use case, the same as in the other 2 of our project, we implement the 3 main pillars, which are intelligent collaborative IoT, human in the loop, and trustworthiness. This presentation will mainly focus on the intelligent collaborative IoT and the human in the loop, and how we implement this in the context of healthcare, and what are our challenges, as well as some thoughts about further reuse. So our use case focuses on supporting clinicians to guide their heart failure patients through treatment. The approach is to combine interventions that are based on guidelines with newly trained AI models from distributed data sets. So in this context, the distributed AI will help provide guidance, detect issues, as well as escalate when issues cannot be resolved, basically generating alerts to physicians, and as well as collecting feedback. The application AI in our use case detects the need for intervention and would as well deploy the intervention. So this distributed AI is a key concept, and the continuous collection and analysis of data coming with a variety of sensors from the patient. And we aim to develop and validate new interventions, as well as there will be a continuous interaction with the physician to support the goals of the recovery program of the patient. To support the AI development, but as well as validation, we have a non-interventional clinical trial that has recruited 20 patients that participate in our pilot. So the way we approach this this use case is that interventions that are based on guidelines will be automated in this setup. However, interventions, the human in the loop, so the clinician will be involved in predefined interventions as well as alerts, but also when AI-based models that are not yet validated are being deployed. And we use distributed learning, federated learning to refine and develop these models that then will be deployed and evaluated in the context of the pilot. So we are combining semi-continuous learning with iterative deployment of new models, and this is the concept that we are trying to validate. I think federated learning is by now reasonably well known, but the idea is to train and validate models, algorithms, without moving data. So main concept is bringing the computation to local data. So you have local workers that are training only on local data. And we only share model parameters with a global component, a global AI component, which we call the coordinator. There are a range of benefits, which are especially important in this case, that local data custodians remain in full control. It enhances privacy, and as well as it enables model customization and tailoring, which in the context of monitoring patients also means hyper-personalization, so tailoring to the needs of each individual. And in general, it helps as well addressing performance. So it has better generalizability and addresses potential bias issues. Now, while there are several successful implementations of federated learning in the context of research with very prominent publications already, however, if we look at the hype cycle of this technology, you can see that is pretty high there. So it's, however, not yet mature enough. So there are still significant challenges for this related to scalability, related to making it ready for deployment in production, but as well as with demonstrating privacy and trustworthiness as well. So this range of issues we are trying to address, and in our case is the way we apply this technology is cross-device. So basically, we'll have workers that will train on the mobile phones of the patients with the data that's being collected, and updates will be sent to the coordinator, which will be in the Mac cloud in our context. So this is basically the collaborative IoT component of our use case. All this data will be received by the local AI component, but and only updates will be sent to the coordinator. However, the global AI component also has a role here to monitor the quality of the training for the local model. So in this context, the data will be trained, and then we will also have a monitoring component that will assess whether the updates coming from the local models should be accepted, and then a new model can be sent to the local devices, or should be rejected because will lead to a model deterioration, which can be, for instance, if data that is being received is low quality. For instance, the devices are not well positioned, or whatever other reason the data is not of sufficient quality. Another concept that we would like to evaluate is whether personalizing to each individual actually can lead to better performing models. So now I would like to move on to the human in the loop and let my colleague Alexis take over.
Thank you, Anka. I'm Alexis. I'm head of product in VEDLIoT. And of course, Anka gave us a very good understanding about the core component of our project. So on the previous slide, we can see an overview of the actual product. If Anka, you can.
And this?
Yeah, here. Yeah, exactly. So here we can see the actual overview of our product. So everything starts from the cloud infrastructure, where physicians create a care plan for patients to follow. And despite the traditional therapy to CVD diseases, they also following physical activities, specific physical activities described from physicians. So these care plans are sent to the mobile app of patients. And the mobile app, despite the components Anka mentioned before regarding training and inference of IntellioT AI models, also includes an SDK from VEDLIoT, which is able to give data directly through BLE interface from the medical devices we can see on the left. So currently the pilot started actually. We're collecting data 20 patients, and we're building our data sets based on demographics, medical events, real-time data and vital signs from the medical devices. And through Google Fit, we're creating our data set where we're going to retrain our models and validate them. So on the next slides, we're going to see a few screens of the mobile application and the web application. Here is the interface of patients. Just, of course, just to give you an understanding, despite the medical data that we're receiving and the vital signs, patients can fill questionnaires about their symptoms and adverse events that they had during a certain time period. And this data also are shared on the web application for physicians to monitor and review. And of course, there are data available for our models. So on the next slide, on the next slides, we can see the interface of physicians of the cloud application. No personal data are stored. And yeah, Anka, you can proceed on the next one. Here is the recommendation engine and the alerting system. So specific algorithms are created locally on the mobile application and to check thresholds regarding vital signs during their day and also during exercise. So these alerts are sent. Most of them are presented to patients directly, but the most crucial ones are sent to the cloud app for doctors to validate. So yeah, that was on the next slide, we're gonna see how the medical exams are stored. And on the next slide, we're going to see the a medical exam for blood pressure. And on the last slide, I think we're gonna see the interface where physicians are creating the care plan which consists, as you can see, from exercise type. We're supporting jogging and cycling based on physicians' guidelines. The time period that they should do this exercises, how many days per week, how many exams per day for each medical device they should do, and thresholds regarding the minimum heart rate and the maximum heart rate during exercises. So that was the user interfaces that patients and doctors are using. So Anka, you can continue.
Thank you, Alexis. So I would like to conclude with our thoughts about generalizability and the solution reuse. Of course, this approach we have implemented in a specific use case, which is healthcare. But we believe that this approach to learning and to applying interventions can be relevant for other application domains where models can be developed across distributed data sets and without moving the data. So examples could be where data sets are distributed, inherently distributed, and or contain sensitive data or just are very large, and where this approach of learning from these distributed data sets and local model adaptation do add value, as well as applications where models do require this monitoring and refinement over time. And another relevant aspect, of course, those applications must be able to benefit from an unlocked model, and where this is possible. So for instance, in healthcare right now, unlocked models, of course, they are not yet fully supported, but there are steps towards that, and we would like to leverage that as the regulatory context is evolving. So because of course AI is a bit different than software, and now it's treated fully as software. So examples of such domains, of course, that are also we would be able to apply this right away is, of course, predictive maintenance of systems, both in healthcare and in other domains, but as well as in the energy domain for monitoring, for instance, monitoring reserves, as well as in disaster preparedness. These are just some examples where these solutions could be further used. So thank you. This is my last slide. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Anka and Alexis. It was very interesting. We're slightly behind time, so if you find it right, I would ask Piotr to present, and then we can have Q&A and questions from the attendees at the same time. So Piotr, if you're ready,
yeah, sure. I just okay, share screen. Yes. Okay. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, okay. Right. So, good morning. My name is Piotr Sowiński. I am a researcher and a programmer at the Systems Research Institute, Polish Academy of Sciences. I represent the Assist-IoT project, and I will be talking about our approach to reusability of technical components in the second pilot of this project. As a very brief overview, in the second pilot, we have 3 business scenarios: occupational safety and health monitoring, fall-related incident identification, health and safety inspection support. So in short, we are concerned with ensuring construction site safety in real time. We are performing for this purpose trials on a live construction site in Poland, managed by our partner Mostostal Warszawa. Some of the key technical challenges that we are facing in the pilot, they are quite tough, I would say, is that firstly, we need to integrate a lot of data from heterogeneous sources. For example, these smartwatches or these prototype location tags, we have a lot more of these tags, of course, and we have a lot of other hardware. This is a very big challenge for us. Also, we need to process all this data with very low latency and then make decisions very quickly, because the speed of this decision decides how safe this environment is. And we also have to face very harsh environmental conditions, such as rain, changes in temperature, a lot of electromagnetic radiation. We also need to conserve workers' privacy to comply with all relevant regulations. And we need to design intuitive, usable, in one word, tactile, mixed reality interfaces. To tackle this, we are developing a lot of components for the pilot and for the project in general. This can be divided into two main groups. The first one is the enablers of Assist-IoT. These are the general, applicable to many use cases components that have behind them the core idea of encapsulation. That means that an enabler only exposes some well-defined interface, and the internals are inaccessible to others to provide a ready-to-go software package, or a hardware package to be exact. And we also have custom components that we develop for specific pilots to meet specific needs of use cases. Today, I will be talking about 4 components: the location processing enabler, the workplace safety controller, which is a custom component, the semantic annotation enabler, and the semantic repository enabler. Starting from the location processing enabler, it is, to put it short, a spatial database with streaming capabilities. Our initial design for this component was directly driven by pilot use cases. So, for example, we had the functionality to decide whether person A is near person C, etc. And the main advantage was that it was very easy for us to define the scope of this enabler and finish it on time. But on the other hand, every time we came up with a new use case, we would need to implement new code, which was tiring enough for our pilots, but it would also limit the reusability in future use cases as well, because it will always require new code. So we got wondering, maybe this is not the best approach to this enabler. So our second design actually is based around configuration. So the end user defines in configuration query templates that specify what spatial computation needs to be done on the data, and then links those templates to input and output streams, data streams, that are also configurable by the end user. And this way, we have achieved a universal component that can tackle almost any location processing task, boosting the reusability greatly. And there is, of course, some disadvantage, and this disadvantage is that we have to face higher upfront development costs. But it has paid off, in our opinion, because it turned out that we could apply this enabler with relatively little effort to a completely different use case in port automation in the same project. The next component is the workplace safety controller, which is the brain of our pilot. It executes most of our application logic. And when we were implementing this component, we have realized that, well, we have very hard problems to solve. We need to stream semantic data in unreliable IoT networks. It's a very hard problem when you dig into it. So we came up with a lot of smart solutions for this. And we thought, well, maybe these smart solutions could be applied elsewhere. So the approach that we took here is that we are creating a general programming framework for streaming semantic applications. So a solid base for building new streaming semantic applications. And then we are implementing our application that we need for the pilot on top of this framework. So the disadvantage here is that, well, we need to face a lot of more development effort. But the advantage, the obvious advantage is that, well, it's this general programming framework is greatly reusable. So this is so much additional development effort that, in fact, we will not be able to publish this framework during Assist-IoT. But we can polish and publish this framework later. And in Assist-IoT, we can check if this framework meets real-life requirements. And that's crucial, because if we just develop something that doesn't work in practice, what use is that? So Assist-IoT serves as a very important stepping stone here. The next component is the semantic annotation enabler, which is a multi-interface annotator of non-semantic data into semantic data. It sounds confusing, so to put it simply, it's a software component that converts data in formats that you are used to, like JSON, CSVs, or XMLs, and turns them into knowledge graphs that have some meaning behind them. The initial design was a custom approach with a completely new annotation language, and it was very advanced. It was very technologically impressive, and it was even applicable to use cases. But paradoxically, it was not very reusable because we were introducing another standard for annotation. It turns out that there are existing languages for semantic annotation, and people are already used to them, so we would have to compete with them somehow. So in the second design, we are building a new application, but we are using an existing annotation language that is basically an industry standard at this point. The main advantages here are that we can use existing tooling and resources, and this creates this sort of synergy because we can also contribute to them. And we have a much easier road to adoption because other people are already familiar with the technology, and we don't need to compete with anyone. The disadvantage is that, well, it is slightly less technologically impressive, but sometimes maybe this technological advancement is not worth fragmenting the standard. And the last component I will talk about is the semantic repository enabler, which is intended to be a central nexus of data models. We store documentation, we tag them with versions, etc. And the initial vision was very narrowly focused on semantic data models, to be more specific. So we at some point realized after we built this component that, well, we could upload anything there and it would still work. So we reframed the scope. We took a step back and said, well, the repository can store any kind of data model, and immediately the number of use cases applicable to this component exploded. So here almost no additional work was needed. We only needed a broader perspective. To summarize our thoughts on reusability of technical components in RIA projects. First of all, don't restrict your component to a specific use case. That's almost always a very bad idea. Consider other use cases from the start. Try to take a step back and put your component in a different context, maybe a different use case, a different domain, and see if you can apply this component there with no changes or with very slight changes. It is also crucial to validate your initial design for a component. You should definitely use this opportunity, especially in RIA projects. Nobody is expecting you to deliver a TRL9 solution from the start. So a stepping stone is also very important. And new standards are often costly and fail. So it's often a better choice to just use something that already exists, an existing established good practice or standard. And this also helps reusability. Iterating on your design is very important because new requirements will show up when you work with your use cases. You have to factor in flexibility in your development plan. If you decide from the start that you are going to do waterfall development, you define use cases, then you do development, then you do integration and validation, then you are going to end up with something that's not very reusable because you are not factoring in the changes in the use cases that will happen. And good reusability, unfortunately, comes at the cost. We've learned this along the way, that we need to factor this in when planning developer effort. We need to have time to ensure that our components are reusable. So thank you for your attention, and I will gladly answer your questions during the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Piotr. I think it was quite insightful in how the process went of trial and error and also levels of ambitious and things that can be achievable and then usable for other use cases. So now, yes, we have extended a bit over time in the presentations, but we still have about 10 minutes for any Q&A from the attendees and also from the presenters to each other use cases. So anyone who has a question, just unmute themselves and feel free to speak. Okay, just to break out the ice then, and in case someone gains the courage to make some questions, I'm just wondering, both use cases deal with data and data privacy, and I was wondering, what was the criteria for defining the location of the data processing and computing within the edge cloud continuum? Because I saw in the healthcare use case that there was some data that was led to the cloud, and also for the physicians to make the decision. I want to know which was the criteria in terms of what moving to the edge enables in terms of data privacy, but also what needs to be stored and processed in the cloud.
If I can answer this question. So basically, we applied the data minimization principle, which is a must in healthcare. So only data that was needed to be transferred was being transferred. So in the case of the clinicians are treating the patient. So they need to have access to all the data. And they are also maintaining the identity. So when data is transferred to the clinical side, they would be able to match those pseudonyms to the actual patients, and they can know in very clear details what happens to their patients, because it would be a safety risk, of course, if they are not able to do that, because they need to intervene if it is needed. With respect to the cloud, only model parameters are transferred to the cloud, and a limited amount of de-identified data that is used for model monitoring. So basically a reference data set with typical or typical data with enough diversity, so that when we get new updates from the local model, we can assess if the model still performs, if there is an improvement or a deterioration.
Thank you very much. Piotr, in your model, have you established this kind of prioritization of where data should be stored and dealt with within this continuum?
Yes, exactly. We had a very similar problem to what Anga just said, because we also have some person that is responsible for the safety of the workers, the manager of the construction site or the OSH manager. They need to be notified if something happens to worker A or B, and we need to have the name of the worker. But they should never view, for example, the heart rate of the worker over time, because that would be a privacy violation, and that would be bad for many reasons. So we took the approach that we are processing as much data on the edge. We are actually using a few very smart approaches to edge intelligence, both symbolic and neural. We have also neural networks on the edge. And then only if something exceptional happens, like an incident, we are notifying the manager of that. We also try to minimize the amount of data that is stored in the logs of the construction site, so there is no biometric data in there. So to put it short, we process biometric data only on the edge and discard it.
Thank you very much. I think that was clear, and it's insightful to see that there's common problems or approaches to how different levels of data are processed within each use case. Does any of the attendees have any questions, specific or general, for the use cases? Okay, it seems everything was quite clear. I've just then we'll just make a question to both presenters. Like Piotr mentioned, at this stage is not that use cases and results need to be absolutely ready for market, but there is an element of cost reduction to the kind of sector in which it's been trying to apply, and also a matter of cost in the development and the usability. So I just wanted to ask, how much has that weighted in the decision of how the program was designed? So whether you thought like which cost could be saved for the industry, and also how do you see that the current development could lead to a cost reduction within the industry which is applied, and also in terms of the applicability of this specific design for diverse sectors?
Right. I think the question was very broad, but I will try to answer as best I can. So as for cost reductions, we are taking that into account a lot because, well, Assist-IoT has scalable in its name. And that not only means that we are dealing with large systems, but it also means that, for example, this wristband, it costs 25 euros. So that's not much. You can buy a wristband like this for every worker. No problem. But the issue is with this wristband that it has very bad sensors. Because it's cheap. So we are actually developing several solutions for coping with this noisy data. We have a very smart filtering algorithm to deal with this. We have also algorithms that are adapted to running on very low resource devices that deal with this issue. So we have this question of cost in our minds, in the back of our heads all the time when applying the system. Of course, we are a research institute, so we are not actually the company that will be bringing this to market, but we are cooperating with our partner, Mostostal Warszawa, who is very cost aware, and they have very strict requirements for that. I'm not sure if that answered your question. So
I think you did. I think you did, because my question was basically how do you weight the cost efficiency in terms of what you're developing and also for the industry. And I think that given the level of readiness of the technology, I think you did answer my questions. Now, Anka and Alexis, do you have any views on that point?
Well, in healthcare, of course, cost is always a question, and especially when running a trial with patients. We have to prove both that this technology solution is safe, it improves quality, but as well as it can reduce costs, or at least it's not going to tremendously increase costs for the hospital. So indeed, part of our KPIs, we did capture the notion of cost, saving time for the clinicians, improving the self-reliance of the patients, reducing the visits to the hospital, because otherwise we will never be able to commercialize or even deploy in production such a solution, or would say, yeah, it's going to cost you like 5 times more. And so yeah, that's essential, of course. I don't know if Alexis would like to add something to this.
I think for the time being, he may have no interventions. And then Anka and Piotr, and of course, Alexis, do you have any questions or any aspects to highlight from each other presentations or use cases? Because in the end, of course, even though the approach may have not been the same and the level of specificity on how the step-by-step of how the technology was developed, it is in the end also dealing with healthcare, like people's health, either in the factory, on their security, or on their everyday kind of routine monitoring. So is there anything you would like to point out or ask to each other about each other presentations?
So what I noticed was actually remarkable, the way we have dealt with privacy and data management, and that we ended up with solutions that were very similar, with keeping data on the edge whenever possible and only sharing data when for the people that really need to access that data. So that shows a high level of reuse, at least of that part of the implementation.
I agree. And we are also using a federated learning approach. I didn't have time to mention that, but yes, but I think our federated learning approach is not as advanced as yours. I think you are on a better path for reusability of this particular part because, well, quite understandably, your project is more focused on that. So I think it would be very interesting to see if in a future project, we could, for example, take some of the solutions that you developed for monitoring the patients and take them to an industrial setting, as you have suggested on the last slide of your presentation.
It could be interesting, actually, for our joint publication to reflect on that.
That's a very good idea.
Thank you for hinting me, or what should I put in the main takeaways? But yes, absolutely. I did see those points of connection between both. And also, I didn't maybe covered in the introduction, but the purpose of this workshop is also for different projects to get to know each other, because often, you know, within NGIoT RIAs, things may operate and simultaneously, but not necessarily having these touching points. So yeah, actually the approach of federated learning to guarantee data privacy was one of my, you know, third backup questions in case everybody's didn't have any.
We have two very interesting scientific presentations on AIoT, artificial intelligence of things, from the two different projects. So what I would like us to do is we're going to give the floor to the speakers. So, you know, nominally you have 10 minutes, but I would say, you know, take your time, right? So that you make a, don't be stressed with the time. So you make a proper presentation. And then we're going to go through a round of questions and answers to close the session. Then we're going to continue in the same room with other presentations. And I would like, you know, everybody in the audience to participate in the discussion in the end, so that we share experience across the project, and we share best practice, and we understand how different projects do similar things. So that's all from my side. René, thank you very much for being here. The floor is yours. Take your time to introduce yourself and to give your presentation. Thank you in advance.
Thanks, John. So then I will start with my presentation on the VEDLIoT project. And in this first presentation of today, I will present the hardware that we are using and that we are also designing in the project. And to give you a short overview of the project itself, we are always starting with this big picture. So VEDLIoT is based like most of the projects. So we have some kind of hardware. Well, in our case, it's hardware we are providing ourselves. Then we are doing middleware things in the field of enhancing machine learning models and emulation and benchmarking. So there are some partners doing these very nice open source tools. And we have also have the use cases in different fields, so smart home, industrial, and automotive. And also an open call session where we really have chosen 10 very interesting projects from various fields. But here in this presentation, we're going to concentrate on the hardware itself. And this is, let's say a hardware family we are designing since many years. So especially these cloud designed boxes, what we call Rex boxes. Let me go to the next slide. So these larger Rex boxes, they were developed in the M2DC project, and they are targeting really cloud computing with microservers, where we increase the integration density to more than 100 servers in 3 rack units. And really started with the thing of having various architectures in there. So that's one of the main advantages of this family, that we can integrate classical CPUs, GPUs, we can have FPGAs in there, but also have ASIC accelerators, which makes it a perfect platform for evaluation of machine learning models. And when it comes to VEDLIoT, we are going more towards the IoT. So the microrex here is a complete new design within VEDLIoT. And for the use cases, so some of the use cases are also targeting the edge computing, so a combination of IoT and edge computing, and therefore we are providing this smaller T-Rex platforms that is really in the field of edge computing. So I will shortly go through a little bit what is inside these boxes. And for the large cloud boxes, we have this high performance microservers. And here regarding the sustainability, it's quite interesting that we are using the industrial standards here. So this is ComExpress based. So okay, these modules or microservers are also designed by ourselves, but basically you can buy the new architectures from the market. So you can have the newest CPUs, you can have FPGAs on that form factor, and you can then always take the newest technology and integrate it into our architecture. And yeah, when we think about what happens in a few years, when this architecture becomes a little bit older, so what would be the downside? Therefore, we said, okay, mostly what becomes better from the architecture point of view is the communication. And when it comes to communication, we integrated into this box a basic compute network, which is 10 gigabit Ethernet, but also having here on the bottom, we call it high-speed, low-latency network. This is the PCI Express-based network where we're directly connecting two modules. So both of them are hosts on the PCI Express switch. And then we're gathering bandwidths of up to 60 gigabits per second and really come down with the latency to around 7 microseconds in a normal IP-based communication. So then let me go on to the edge server. So the T-Rex one, a server that is used within VEDLIoT a lot because it is quite close to the architectures we are using in the micro-racks later on. And this is basically a downscale from this cloud-based system. So we are again having the 10 gigabit Ethernet in there, and we again having the PCI Express switches that allow for very low latency and high bandwidth communication. And one difference to the cloud-based system is that in the edge, we are also providing I/O. So we can attach cameras or sensors to this box to really be at the edge of the cloud and can use it in various ways. And a different to the cloud is also that we are here using this COM-HPC module. So this is somehow a successor of the COM-Express I showed before. And they are a little bit larger and they can provide a little bit more power to the modules so that, this will more or less become the new standard for microservers in the next years. And for the new architecture within VEDLIoT, where we are concentrating on IoT, we are designing, or we have designed the micro-rack system, which is a little bit different approach because here we are more concentrating on small embedded systems. So we are again relying on industrial standards like the SMARC form factor for integrating FPGAs and ARM processors. And on the other side, we have the NVIDIA Jetsons integrated here with support not only for the Saviors, but also for the Orins. And they are integrated with the gigabit Ethernet. They can provide power over Ethernet. We have for the automotive use case, single pair Ethernet in there. So basically this one provides all the interfaces you need to interact in an IoT environment. And the nice thing here is that we can really combine architectures. So we can have the NVIDIA, for example, is CPU combined with GPU, but on top of them, we can have an FPGA here on the SMARC side and having them communicating via gigabit Ethernet, or we can plug in M.2 accelerators here and connect it either to the SMARC or the NVIDIA and really extend the system to the needs of the use cases. And another important thing is here that we are concentrating on efficiency. So every part of this architecture can be monitored separately with what we call high-speed power monitoring. This basically means that we have some kilohertz of monitoring bandwidth, and so you can really see what is drawing how many power, and you even see the application itself in which state it is, which is a quite nice view here. And here we see an overview of all the modules or microservers that are currently available and fit inside these boxes. And this starts with standard CPUs on the top here. And there are really large COM-HPC Xeon D servers available for the T-Rex, but also in the older COM-Express spec there are AMD EPYCs, Ryzen Core i7, so everything you would expect to see in a server. And we have these smart modules, which can also be just a CPU, which not necessarily need to be an FPGA. So that's also quite interesting on the smart form factor that we are having all architectures available and on the market, and that we can just buy them and plug them in there. When it comes to FPGAs, there's not so many things available on the market, but you see that there's a Stratix 10. This one is from Reflex. We have on the newer COM-HPC module, there's an ultra scale from Trends. And there are some smaller vendors for the SMARC-based ultra scale modules. For the GPU SoC, this is commonly known. These are Jetsons from NVIDIA, which we think is a very interesting architecture for machine learning. And then we are coming to, let's say, more specialized accelerators. So the Gabarino, for example, is really small, which is more for the micro rack size. And we are also trying to build new microservers here, for example, based on the coherent logics accelerator, which is still work in progress. And as you've seen before, we can integrate this PCI Express modules, and we really did nice benchmarkings with, for example, the Halo 8, which I will also show in a few moments. And this is something what we did in the beginning of the project. So before we decided how the micro-racks should look like, we did a survey on the market, and really tried to find every accelerator that is available. And this is widely spread. For example, here you see the Halo 8, which is an PCI Express-based accelerator, next to the Xilinx, which is an ACAP, so FPGA with accelerators, or the NVIDIA Xaver, which is GPU-based. So we really gathered all this architecture into this sheet, and this is the theoretical maximum performance. And then from that, we classified them to ultra low power, which is more in the range of microcontroller style. The low power, what we, for example, want to have in our rack system. And then we are coming to the high performance, which is more related to a cloud system, where you can do learning, for example, and really have the high performance. And after we did the survey, we tried to acquire as many architectures as we could and did a benchmarking on this. And here's one result of this benchmarking, which will be published in April. So we have a paper on the date conference regarding this results. And this basically is showing energy efficiency and showing, let's say, the architectures that are right now available in our Rex family. And you can see here that, for example, the classic CPUs, they are not really feasible for machine learning. But all the GPU-based architectures evolved in the last years, because Nano is quite old. Then you have the TX2, and afterwards we were skipping to something like Xavier NX or AGX. So you see that the energy efficiency really improved over the years. And on the right side, we have some FPGAs or even Versals here. And for example, the Versal with its integrated AI accelerators also has very good energy efficiency. And yeah, I mentioned the Halo 8 before because we really did interesting benchmarks with it. This yeah, high number here is because that's just the ASIC itself. So that's just the accelerator. That's why it has two parts here. So the Halo 8 together with a host system, so something where Linux runs on and yeah, all the data shifting is done, is still very energy efficiency. So very energy efficient. So there is yeah, there are coming up really interesting architectures on the market, and we, with our architecture that we provide in VEDLIoT, are capable of integrating them also in the next years and providing, yeah, let's say the necessary infrastructure to integrate all these various architectures into the compute continuum of our, yeah, let's say machine learning IoT devices. And yeah, that's it from my side regarding the hardware in VEDLIoT. Thanks.
Thank you very much, René. So I suggest that for the sake of time, we give the floor to Clemens for his presentation. It should be 10 minutes, and then we come back with questions on both presentations. Clemens, is that okay? Then the floor is yours. Please take also your time to introduce your ideas, your project, yourself, and your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Clemens Sauer. I'm representing Neurocontrols, and we are part of the NGIoT consortium. Sorry, I don't know what's happening here. Which is, I think, 23 participants and multiple use cases, and I'm managing the use case on transportation and logistics. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to do rail health condition monitoring, which has the benefits of improving rail safety, and it also has the benefits of increasing asset availability and reducing maintenance cycles. So this use case is very difficult because in logistics, everything is cost-driven and performance-driven. It's completely different from what is available in the market today for passenger rails. In a passenger rail, when you have, let's say, a flat spot or a clunking noise, then it's annoying to the riders, and we are really focusing here on comfort, and any kind of fault will be serviced right away. But when you talk about commercial business, they really would like to know, is the failure critical or not critical? So you have to differentiate between critical and non-critical failures. You have to differentiate between multiple non-critical failures and critical failures, etc., etc. And you have to do it for approximately 1/10 the cost of passenger rail. So that is very ambitious. You have higher performance and lower cost. So we developed about 8 different technologies to bring down the overall cost, which you can see here. So we focused on eliminating the batteries with energy harvesters. We optimized the communication energy by using mesh networks. We moved to LoRa and so on and so on. So this was a very nice project. And on top of that, our partner Breakout Institute developed remote attestation, which is basically the next level up from TLS security. The point is not just to secure safely between the nodes, but the point here is to make sure if different communication nodes are allowed to communicate with each other. So let's go about the next step. The challenge which we have here in terms of exploitation and reuse is Neurocontrols is a very small startup, and Breakout Institute is an open source basic research operation. So basically, the small startup it has a challenge in entering multi-million-dollar businesses with customers, because we simply don't have a track record, and the institute basically is prohibited from commercialization. So the question is, how can you exploit or how you can reuse the technology is a very interesting question. So for the startup, our strategy is to basically work with software as a service providers as an accelerator. So we basically provide engineering services or licenses for larger companies, which basically then bring this product to the market. But for us, there's also a lot of spin-off from this development, because what we're doing is we're doing micro edge, and we're doing we are doing machine learning. And the biggest problem about real life IoT solutions is you don't have data. So data collection is extremely expensive, extremely timely, and what we have developed as part of this project is a very good approach on how to automatically collect diverse data clusters during product operation or lifetime testing, so that you can collect the data sets, which then later on you need to do the machine learning or the AI. So basically, we're moving from using this product development for developing test systems which help other companies accelerate AI. For Parkhausen Institute, where they're basically focusing on popular research, well, I think ultimately their way of reuse or exploitation is to enable new technologies or to enable new use cases. And everybody knows that TLS, yes, is state of the art, but it's not hacker proof. And remote attestation is really the next level up to improve the cybersecurity in the IoT world. So ultimately, they're working on very mainstream technologies and hope to set or define the next state of the art. And this is how they indirectly reuse or exploit their contribution from this project. What I want to do in the end, eventually, I would like to go towards vibroacoustic self-powered micro-edge sensor, which is basically a smart bolt. So not everything which we have developed in NGINIOUS was finished, so we have more work to do. And this is basically our long-term project, and this is where I want to go. This is basically a description of what we did and how we want to exploit. I would like to go to the questions and answers, because I think this is an interesting part. I just wanted to give you an idea of what this project was about and what challenges we have.
Okay, thank you very much, Clemens. It's clear. So I'd like to open the floor for questions. Of course, I've got a couple of my own questions, but I'd like to open the floor to everybody. And I would like to ask, what questions do you have for any of the two presentations we've seen so far? Please feel free to raise your hand, and I can give you the floor, and because it might take some seconds to think. So what I was thinking, and this is a question for both presentations, I was wondering whether you benchmark the performance of these systems, right? Because I think that's also very important, you know, for exploitation and usability, right? If you can present the performance in some benchmarks. Nowadays, there are benchmarks like MLPerf and different, you know, types of PCB or Edge AI vendors, right? They go there and they see what their systems do performance-wise. So I think the question is both for René and for Clemens, the benchmarking. Feel free.
Okay, I'll start on answering that. So yes. Benchmarks and publications, I think is very important when you are working in medical or pharmaceutical fields. I think when you're talking about industrial problems, these are actual problems coming from mid and large size companies. So the benchmark is not really so much in the forefront as the technical solution and performance. So of course, publications are nice and helpful for publicity. And yeah, ultimately, we promote our solutions in technical conferences. But in terms of benchmarks, it's really just explaining how it's done today and what is different from what you're doing today. So as I explained in the brief pamphlet which I've sent to you, the 8 new technologies which differentiate us from the conventional IoT sensors.
René?
Yeah, for VEDLIoT, this looks a little bit different because we have a lot of use cases that really need to make sure that you're matching the latency for the application. And I would like to share my screen again because I just pulled up the paper here that we placed on date. And this is, let's say one benchmarking we did within VEDLIoT, and we evaluated the performance of YOLO v4 within our resolution, and used all the architectures we had available here at our labs, or at the labs of the partners within VEDLIoT, and really looked into it. What is the performance you need, and what is the power budget you have in the end? So we, as you mentioned, started with ML-perf in the beginning, but some of these architectures are too small to fit ML-perf in there. And from that point on, we really had a long time in discussions on how do we now do our own benchmarks that are really comparable, because that's quite hard, even when it comes to tool chains, because there is not a single tool chain that runs on all the architectures. So we had to somehow make sure that we are really comparing the right things here. And then we are not only measuring the performance, but we are also validating that our results are correct. And that's something we did here. This is also just some examples, but this is a recall precision gradient where basically 3 architectures are compared, and you can see ABC are the architectures, and 1 and 2 are different classes. And we have the worst case and the best case here. So in the worst case, this really differs a lot for the different nets executed on different architectures, where basically we found out that we are there benchmarking or evaluating the tool chains, because these results really depend on the tool chain and not so much on the architecture itself. And but most of the classes look like the second one, where they are very close together. So in the end, we showed that all our architectures are executing the same things, even though we had different tool chains to execute everything. That's the way how we showed that our results are still comparable. And this is a quite interesting outcome, because this is the starting point to look what architecture do you really need in your use case, and where are your drivers? So do you need to be energy efficient, or do you need the performance?
Exactly. So it's not only for machine learning performance, right? It's for power efficiency here as well, right?
Exactly.
There are different metrics here. You can be good on one and maybe not so good on the other sometimes.
Exactly. And we always draw a diagonal in here, and everything that is to the left up is more energy efficient. So when you know the performance you need, then you can basically decide on your energy efficiency for your application. And in the end, also decide on how much it should cost, because most of this directly translate into money. So everything that is more energy efficient in most cases is also more expensive.
Okay, thank you, René. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience. If not, I can have a very quick question to both of you, but I don't know, are there any questions from the audience? I'd prefer to take any questions of the audience if there are any, because I think both presentations were were really nice. No questions. So I would like, a very quick answer, because maybe oh, yes, anyone? No? So I would like a very quick feedback from Clemens and you, René, on the following point, right? I understand that what you presented is intellectual property, right, of a single partner in the project. At least in Clemens' case, this is what I got, right? So I think what is important, what is very important here, and we don't always do in EU projects, is the IP protection, right, and the patenting and so on. Is there anything doing in terms of exploitation in this direction? And again, this question goes to both of you. And I would appreciate a quick answer, right? Because we will move to the next room.
So from our side, talking about the Rex boxes itself, so the whole family of hardware I just showed is we are working together with an industrial partner, Christmann Information Technologies, located here in Germany, and they are really offering this hardware to sell for everybody that is interested.
Yeah, in terms of Barkhausen Institute, it's a basic research institute. So of course, for them, they just have a reuse license that you have to credit them if you reuse their code. And in terms of the neurocontrols contribution, most of our IP is trade secrets. Of course, making patents would be very nice, but if you are a 5-man startup, well, sometimes you should think about it as the first thing to do, but it hasn't been the first thing yet.
Okay, well, I think it's something you may consider, because it helps also for attracting investments down the road, right? Usually.
So again, to the IntellioT use, the IntellioT project. So we heard before in the first session, Anka, on the healthcare use case. And I will now talk a bit about the agriculture use case, as I'm the lead. And Wolfgang from AVL is, the semi-lead, let's call it like that. It is a bit of a different one than a traditional agriculture use case. So we are focusing in this use case more on agricultural vehicles, as on really a specific task like plant grow or harvesting and everything like that. So activities. So we are, as I said, focusing mainly, because that's also where the research area or the industrial area, focus from our two companies, AVL and TT Control. So don't be alarmed when you think it's a bit in a different direction. So just quickly some words about the IntellioT project. Let me put something away from the screen. So so IntellioT, the aim of the IntellioT project was in principle to create a reference architecture or framework with which we can so-called semi-autonomous IoT applications. So we're not targeting completely full autonomous application, but they can do certain tasks by themselves, but also to a certain extent, we wanted to keep the human in the loop, because the human still has a huge experience and huge knowledge about the field. So we said, okay, the machine or the application can do a certain part, but when the application runs into situations where it doesn't know how to handle it anymore, the human will come into the loop and interact with the system, and the system can also learn from the human to improve its performance. So for that, of course, for the IoT solution to work, we need a decent computation area of environments. So we're targeting also there a lot on edge computing, and of course network communication, because there's a lot of interaction between different systems and between the human and the system. So it's important to that. And as mentioned, it can dynamically adapt, so it changes its behavior, it learns from the environment, but also from the interaction. And of course, upholding their security, privacy, and trust, so that the interaction is safe, the communication is safe, and also in a trustworthy way. So just a quick how this looks. So you have on the left side, you have your applications being developed, which could, for example, be as in the IntellioT project, we already heard we had the healthcare use case, but we also had a manufacturing use case and we had the agriculture. So for that, different kind of applications were developed. Then they, of course, need to be deployed on the different kinds of infrastructure, which could be an industrial robot or industrial manufacturing line. The devices that we saw in the healthcare use case, so mobile devices, and also the agricultural vehicles. So we're targeting a semi-autonomous e-tractor, so an electrical tractor, or a system that could that is targeting this area. And yeah, that can be seen as an edge computing device. And yeah, that's where the applications that need to be deployed. And as mentioned, there is the human in the loop that can thus interact with the system in a trustworthy way, so that data is being treated safely, or no external entity can hack the system. And then based on the expertise of the human, the application or the system learns and potentially updates its knowledge and its behavior, so that if a similar situation occurs in the future, the system knows how to handle that in the next phase. So then, yeah, towards the agricultural use case, as mentioned, we were targeting that we have an agricultural vehicle, in this case, an e-tractor, which is a prototype developed by AVL, which would then perform certain tasks on the field, which would be defined by a human operator. This could be done, the task defined could be done in a farming management system, or we have some kind of a logbook where the farmer can define then which fields has to be plowed, or which area needs to be sprayed, things like that. So then the activity or the plan, the mission is then deployed to the tractor via a so-called agent-based system, a hypermass, which then controls in principle the tractor. It tells the tractor, okay, now you have to drive there, then you have to do this task, and you have to drive there, and then this is your next waypoint where you have to move to, and so the tractor will then perform its task. The tractor will, of course, interact with the farming field, so where it is driving, and it could happen that it encounters certain obstacles in the field, or that it detects by the sensor certain situation which it doesn't know yet in advance how it can do it, because it has some knowledge about the environment but not a complete knowledge. So then if an unknown situation occurs, then yeah, it either tries to interact with other entities in the field. It could be that there are maybe other sensors or drones, or maybe other tractors or vehicles in the field that have already encountered this situation, and then it could exchange knowledge by that. Or yeah, if it can't, it will stop in its situation and will inform the human operator, stating from, hey, I'm stuck, please help me. The human operator connects remotely to the system, and then with the aid of virtual reality, it just takes over control of the tractor, and then it sees in principle what the tractor is seeing, providing the human operator a bit of the feeling that he's sitting inside the tractor, and then it can remotely control the tractor and then drive around the obstacle or overcome the situation. And then based on this interaction, the system knows, okay, now I know next time how to overcome this, and yeah, solve this situation, and then reduce slowly the human machine interaction. And at the end, hopefully in the future, you will have complete autonomous system that can overcome quite a lot of situations. Yeah, so yeah, some of the technologies, as I said, yeah, so we had the mobile platform, which we equipped with like pretty high performance computing platform, so that it has this, that it can be seen as an edge device. And there we enabled, or we hosted all the different kind of applications. So we have the AI that it can learn. We have, as a security, we used also blockchain solutions, 5G communication, and other trustworthy solutions, the interaction possibility with the human operator, so that it can contact the system and can also interact with it and control it, and the interaction with potential other devices, for example, a drone or other factors on the field. we had this so-called logbook, which is also some kind of farm management system where the human operator defines then which area it has to traverse, or so it could be plowing, sowing, or harvesting, and it calculates then the trajectory over it. And as you can see here is then a view that you have from the sensors from the tractor, and this is what the human operator would then from its workplace, which could be just in its own office, which could be kilometers away from the area where the tractor is driving, so that it can take over control and really drive the vehicle around the obstacle. So here we had on the premises of AVL, we had this dustbin standing there, and that was the obstacle then driving around it. Yeah, and a bit of the architecture so that we had this different kind of infrastructures where we have everything located. So we had the tractor infrastructure where then a lot of the applications, which are then which we will talk about, that's the reusability of these different applications which were developed in the project. And we had the whole 5G infrastructure, where also different parts of the are deployed. You have the human operator, which then also connects via the 5G to the system. And we have the whole hypermass, which controls and plans the functionality of the tractor. And this, I was interested, or the remark in the previous session mentioned by Piotr, that don't develop a solution only for a single use case, which is exactly what we did inside the IntellioT project. So a lot of these technologies that you see here, like the AI, or the event captures, or the DLT, or the hill servers, or the other solutions, the AI, they were in principle all developed in a generic way, which we'll also see then in the reusability plans. And we deployed them, of course, fine-tuning them to the different domains, but we developed not individual solutions only for the specific use case. So the solutions developed in the IntellioT project are being deployed in the manufacturing domain, in the agriculture domain, and in the healthcare domain. So we exactly targeted that, what Piotr said, and they were like, hey, that's actually a very good point, and yeah, we targeted exactly. So yeah, so as mentioned in the beginning, we had this framework where you can see here an overview of highlighting the parts that were of the total framework. So not every technology were always deployed in each kind of domain. So the gray ones were taken out of the agriculture one because they didn't fit there. But all the other technologies were applied or tested, validated in the agriculture domain. And the ones I will talk a bit about are the so-called hypermedia mass, which is this web-based solution for hosting agents that can control other entities via a thing description. We had this AI, which was developed by one partner, and we applied it for this obstacle bypassing. We had the hill application, so the human in the loop application for taking over control of the IoT solution. In our case, just the tractor, but there is also in the manufacturing, they can take control over of the industrial robot. The trustworthiness, so that no external entity can control from remotely the system unwantedly. We had many different 5G components for having an excellent communication, because we are sending quite a lot of data, especially the remote control, and that the human has to see what the tractor is seeing. So a lot of also visual data which has to be sent. So we developed there were different technologies applied there. And we had this so-called infrastructure assisted knowledge management, AIKM, which was what I mentioned before. If the model, the AI model that the entity has in the field is not sufficient, is not having enough data about it, it can interact with other entities and know, okay, you have a different model. I know that your model has already this information. Please provide me with this model so that I can update my model based on your knowledge. So, and yeah, and what we mainly for reusability plans inside the project, we try to develop all the things in a as much as possible way, an open way as much as possible. So we're not explicitly always talking here open source. So certain technologies were open source, but we try to use open standards, open interfaces, open APIs, and mainly also generic standards that are very common in the industry or in the research that we also deployed in our solutions. So for the hypermedia, for the agent-based solution, we had this W3C Web of Things thing descriptions, the AI. So we generalized it. It was generalized for a different kind of obstacle types, but as in general, they made it in such a way generic that they can also, independent of kind of input is provided, or it can also be used for different outputs. So it doesn't need to be explicitly only for this kind of machines. It could also be for a robot or for often different kind of vehicles. For the hill application or the human in the loop, this VR solution, they have this ISA, so-called ISA SDK, which is a completely open SDK by the partner, which enables you to interact with many different kinds of XR, so extended reality devices, which is a combination of AR and VR, and enables this very smooth interaction between the device and the human operator. The trustworthiness solutions, they were completely developed as standalone, completely hardware independent. So they have been deployed on industrial edge devices, which are, for example, Microsoft solutions. But in our case, we had a solution edge device based explicitly for mobile machinery, so that it could be deployed. So they have this very generic solutions that can be deployed on different solutions, on different entities. The 5G were using the standards that are currently simply being used there, so like 3GPP, and the openness was through this open source solution. And yeah, the AIKM, there's a complete ontology developed that it can reuse different kind of models, AI models, so that they can be integrated in very different ways. Yeah, so we targeted mainly, so summarizing, we targeted for the interoperability or the reusability of our solutions, not targeting only one domain, but really targeting many different domains. And additionally, we also targeted this goal for the open calls that we performed, saying, okay, we make these technologies now available for the open calls, and the open call winners should reuse our solutions in such a way in new domains, the domains that we haven't targeted. So we said, okay, we're going to go towards smart cities, construction, and that's proving that our solutions can be taken as the way they are and be deployed in new domains without too much effort for remodification of the solutions. And yeah, that's what I had to say.
Thank you very much, Martin. I think it makes a lot of sense that you're expecting open calls recipients to get this and try to apply it in other sectors. I don't know if, following John's advice, should we do the questions for this presentation now? I'm just wondering if, you know,
we have only 3 presentations, so if
so let's make the questions now and then we move to Panagiotis.
Okay.
So anyone from the attendees have any points or questions that they would like to raise to Martin?
Or to Wolfgang?
Or to Wolfgang, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes? No? Okay, if that is the case, I have a question. Of course, this is applicable to agriculture use cases in general, but I maybe I can repeat it to each participant. There's 2 peculiarities about that field, or maybe you tell me it's not a peculiarity and it's actually something that happens in every industry. But agriculture sector may have the problem of connectivity constraints in open environments, but also a larger device, in this case a tractor, that could increase computing at the edge. So if that is the case, were those particular restraints or considerations you had when designing this use case, or is this simply a kind of a problem that any industry faces with different kind of degrees of complexity?
No, this was definitely one of the topics that we considered, because it is, as you mentioned, the connectivity, especially as we are located in Austria, we have quite a lot of mountains. So there is that is quite often also blocking communication, or it can be on any kind of area, that if you have these huge fields, if we're talking about, if you're looking at America, where there are like cultural fields, they are really huge. And so communication was definitely there a problem. So what we target is that in principle, the majority or almost everything of the processing needs to be done on the machine itself. So we see we said, okay, we see the tractor, in our case, that's the tractor. We see that as a complete edge device, or it's more like then a system of systems in principle, you could say it. But this whole device should be capable of being able to perform the task completely by itself. And yeah, of course, the problem is, of course, that, as we mentioned, it still happens that you cannot consider all the situations, and especially in the farming domain, if you are driving out with the vehicle, especially also when you're harvesting, there's quite a lot of environmental conditions that always provide difficulties performing autonomous behavior. So this, of course, is still a challenge. What if the tractor or the vehicle comes into a situation where it simply really doesn't know how to handle it?
Yeah.
And there is then really the situation, okay, if it needs this remote support, how do we solve that problem? And this is still, to a certain extent, a bit of an unsolved solution. And yeah, we're still looking into what 5G would potentially be an option. But yeah, it's always about distance and also the amount of data that needs to be transferred. But this is still an open topic.
Yeah, that I can imagine is particularly hard in the agricultural sector, no?
Yep. And
yeah, I'd like to add maybe a little to that. So replacing the human on the tractor is maybe more than on a car, where it's more about driving and keeping the car on the street. But on the tractor, you have a lot more human-machine interface, not only for driving purpose, means for accelerating, decelerating, braking, steering, but also for actuating implements, for example. You have a rear lift, you have a power takeoff, you have 6 auxiliary valves on big tractors that are also actuated by the driver. And for us, reuse somehow is also to understand what the driver does. He has a lot of functionality, and making the tractor autonomous means understanding what the driver does. He has a lot of sensors, stereo camera, and accelerator sensors, and a lot of human learning. A lot of human experience, and making the tractor autonomous means to replace all this capability of an experienced driver, or to understand which domains of this knowledge are there and how parts of them can be replaced.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Yeah, I think that was clear enough. And yes, definitely, I think this will be a common thread for the following use case, but we'll see. I don't want to get ahead of, but definitely also the specifications for inputs and outputs for the AI models, they may have more heterogeneous data sources in the field that one would have, for example, while driving on a city. But well, if it's okay, then with the rest of the attendees, shall we move to Panagiotis to present the?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
I think the conditions on the field are far more difficult, because the plants are growing. So every time you go to the field, it looks different.
Different than the day before, than the minute before.
And it's yeah, and you have to distinguish between the plants and the weed, and you have not so clear structures like the streets, and you may have missed, you have a lot of more dirt, and the sensors needs to handle that situation. So I think it's even more demanding than on the street.
Yep, I completely agree.
Perfect. Thank you very much to both. Now, Panos, is that a nickname for Panagiotis, or I've been saying?
Yeah, Martin. Thank you. Yeah, that's a nickname, and a shorter, easier one.
Fair enough.
So yeah, all right. So I hope you can see my screen now. Thank you for the invitation, and I liked very much the previous presentation by Martin. Since we are also focusing here in TERMINET, we selected, a similar use case about smart agriculture, smart farming, and all these, use cases that are related and are close to the production and the real users like farmers and producers. So this is TERMINET. We have just a second for providing you the main business logic using some common, I can say, technologies like the other projects, like federated learning, AR/VR solutions, and IoT inventory, security, of course, and privacy. And we're using also SDN technology for interconnecting the devices and resolving any kind of interoperability between the devices and the actuators. While we're providing in TERMINET 6 use cases, including the first one where I'm presenting today, but we have also healthcare, efficient buildings, energy efficient manufacturing, to healthcare use cases, and also for prediction in industry. So we selected the first one since for us is a flagship, and also we show a large market potential while we're progressing very fast on that to foster, all the market exploitation and all the user exploitation coming from this project. While the first spin-off has already installed by TERMINET by using this kind of technology, especially in Greece, where smart agriculture and smart animal monitoring is on top of priority. So here you can see at a glance the architecture we are using. For us, beyond a common target we have all together here, by bringing intelligence near to the devices and close to the edge, we're also using SDN interoperability, interactivity, connectivity between the devices and the actuators, and also we're using a lot of resource utilization for providing the necessary resources to any kind of edge computing and edge node. And also federated learning helping us a lot for first to provide privacy by design architecture. So no real data coming from resources are exposed to third parties, but only what is exchanged is the models. So we're using models only, not only to protect the data, but also to decrease the volumes of data exchange between the edge nodes and the cloud, for example. So I will be a bit practical in this presentation, and I will leave some time at the end to give you a short demonstration, video demo about the use of this use case in TERMINET. So the benefits are a lot for the final farmer, the final producer, like providing smart, decisions to him, but also to make her life easier, and to provide all the logistics in a friendly and a very attractive way. Since, as you know, also we have to work concurrently with the technical development, with also fostering the digital culture of all of the end users to use all these technologies we are providing, and also to be a part of all this ecosystem. So, for example, machine learning in TERMINET is helping us to have real-time detection, for example, for anomalies, and many other real-time information, which is provided by smart glasses, AR-enabled glasses, to the farmer, since the farmer could use both his hands for other jobs and working around. So smart glasses could be a new IoT device in his life to make all this working and for this everyday life easier. And this is not only to display information or to to providing guidelines and what the end user should do. Here we extend all this concept by using federated learning, as the previous presenters mentioned very well, about combining different domains for global knowledge. So for us, for example, here, we combine information coming from farms, on barns, with the industry, information coming from a milk production industrial unit about milk quality, so as to combine all these models without exposing real data and conceptually to have mutual decisions for both of them and increase the global knowledge by using decentralized knowledge. And this is something quite new in the NGIoT, field, since we may combine also very heterogeneous information coming from totally different domains like manufacturing and milk production, or let's say environmental monitoring underseas, for example. So that's a new kind of information that could provide us much more accurate decisions information and predictions. And by using this new AR-enabled devices, IoT device in the everyday life, we can have, for example, very good production monitoring for business and management, AR environment in a very friendly manner, easy management and easy monitoring of animals and resources in the farm, and of course a real-time notification system, which could be also interconnected with the industry, not also in the first level of production, but also with the industry, and to have a mutual interchange of models in order to have better decisions for both of them. And of course, by bringing usability and to the end user, and to make this device very easy for him to use. For example, to have reduced latency and real-time information, we can personalize the environment and to give the farmer and the producer what really needs to use, and also to provide easy access to all this information by simple actions, and in a simple way of moving his hands or his head. So at a glance, the benefits of all this effort we have is not only on the user perspective, but also to a very common KPI like decreasing the fertilizers or decrease the water use or the fossils. Simple things we could provide by having better decisions at the edge, and guiding to the end users, the farmers, the producers, to better decisions on this perspective. And since we are talking about reusability, we are happy to share data sets already published. Here, for example, you can see data about cherry trees, and this data set includes information coming from drones, ground sensors, weather stations, a lot of them. So I believe this could be very useful also for any kind of project that is focusing on agriculture activities. And also we have a similar one about peach trees, and more data sets are about to come, and to share to the community. This, of course, free to use, published in Dataport and Zenodo, and we're very happy to provide more information on that. And of course, we can also count on common publications based on these data sets, since by using AI, we should now provide and ensure that this would be fair enough about the data sets used for training, and also transparent and fair, and friendly to the end users, providing some more information about how the algorithms are working and trained enough. So let me, for the rest of my time, to share you some key points on the, sorry. All right, here some key points about the real development, how all these end-to-end, smart farming and animal monitoring solutions work in practice. And here we can start with the main dashboard we are using.
This interface and this dashboard is exclusive to this use case. Just to my question, because to ask you that, just to clear the scope.
Yeah, sure, please.
No, just wondering whether this interface and this dashboard is specific on the agriculture use case, right? Or
yes, exactly. This is the dashboard used for agriculture only. And here you can see some visualizations, the data set, but what is more important in how the end user senses and experiences all this new kind of technology in his everyday working life. So here is an interview by a producer about using this use case.
Panos, just for you to know, I'm reading the subtitles and of course I'm getting the idea, but we're not listening to the sound. I don't know whether you're taking that into consideration or.
So sorry for that.
Yeah,
so I will give you some points of the.
That's why I was asking the questions to guide a bit of the video.
Okay. There are some subtitles here, but I will intervene in the next time. So beyond that, we can also support information coming from in real time about, for example, what is the status of the animals, or to create digital fences. And all this information also could be interconnected with the industry about, for example, for improving the milk production, or what the industry gets as a feedback from the production unit, and to have an interaction between them. So here we can see, for example, how the information about the real-time coordinates of the animals are received from this portal, and also this kind of information could be also projected to the AR glasses. And of course, the farmer and the producer could be intervene and get some actions based on the real-time information he gets to change or to set another digital fence, and of course to guide all the livestock unit to get into another area for better grazing. And this better grazing as a feedback could be also feed all the industry unit coming from the milk production, and the both together could work as exchanging mutual information for getting as a result what a better, a better quality of products that could be beneficial for both of them. So thank you for your attention. You can, of course, you can have more information. You can share more information in the TERMINET, the project webpage, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, I would be very, very glad to discuss with you and with the other projects that have similar use cases, common synergies like papers, data sets, and of course, maybe to see some kind of a pilot or a use case synergy together. Thank you.
Thank you, Panos. Thank you very much. Yes, as I was saying before, also the purpose of this workshop is to share synergies and for each project and a specific team member to get acquainted with the other RIAs that are going on. So thank you very much. Actually, when I was listening to your presentation, I know, Panos, if you were in my workshop, the previous one, or in the second room with John, but for example, there is a similarity in the way you've mentioned federated learning has become a key component in compiling information from very different sources. In the case of Assist-IoT, it was compiling information from various sources for worker safety. So I think that seems to be a resource that is common in several use cases.
Yes, Martin, if I may, what is the main benefit of federated learning for us is that we can exchange data models without exposing data. When sharing data, there is a very tough process, legal process behind, since we have to ensure that everything goes well with the legal and ethics issues between exchanging them. But when we're exchanging models, then the process is straightforward. So we may see a synergy between the projects by exchanging federated models by different domains, and to see and to have a common validation of our final results.
Absolutely. I think that is a takeaway that at least most use cases have been pointing out at this stage. Does anybody, or Martin, Wolfgang, who already presented, or the Zacharias at Tepsi, the incoming presenters, have any questions for Panos?
No, not at the moment.
Yeah, I was wondering whether it was Wolfgang or just the
I think it's just background noise.
The background noise, exactly. Just trying to figure out the question. Well, thank you very much, Panos. I do have some questions, but maybe I'll use them at the end just to try to get the feedback from each use case. So if that is okay, I think we're about in right time. Shall we hear from Zacharias and Tepsi on IoT-NGIN use case?
Yes, hello. Let me share my screen.
Hi, Zacharias.
Hello. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Yes,
so
but it is not the right one. It is.
Oh, I think we're seeing presentation mode, so we can see your slide and the future slide.
Now it is better?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Perfect. So hello to everyone. I'm Zacharias from Synelixis, and I'll present to you the reusability plans in IoT-NGIN machine learning-based crop disease prediction, smart irrigation, and precision aerial spraying. IoT-NGIN's main objective is to provide tools for next-generation internet. One of the main contributions of IoT-NGIN is its meta-architecture for next-generation system, which, as you can see, includes elements for several operations of IoT, from infrastructure and workloads to analytics, automation, and support for edge computing. Particularly, IoT-NGIN contributes to IoT underlying technologies such as M2M communications with relay strategies based on device-to-device communications, MCM communications with enabling time-sensitive networking, and exploiting 5G capabilities with 5G resources, API, and 5G slicing. In addition, IoT-NGIN contributes to IoT intelligence by introducing machine learning as a service, which provides cloud-native MLOps and multiple machine learning paradigms support, such as reinforcement learning, privacy preserving, federated learning, model sharing, etc. Furthermore, tactile IoT contributions are being made by developing IoT device discovery, recognition, and indexing modules, intelligence access control with multiple criteria, and AR-based tools. Also, some key components of IoT-NGIN meta-architecture are cybersecurity and data privacy. Regarding cybersecurity, methodological approaches have been made to federated learning cybersecurity, as well as protection measures against cyber attacks on federated machine learning, vulnerability scanner for networked IoT devices, and threat monitoring based on honeypots. For the data privacy part, IoT-NGIN is using federated inter-DLT technologies, privacy-preserving self-sovereign identities, and meta-level semantic twins. So here we can see our machine learning-based crop disease prediction use case in a high-level overview. So our objective is to address sustaining economic and food security via crop disease prediction, smart irrigation, and precision aerial spraying, as well as improve the crop disease predictions and thus optimize the precision of aerial spraying. Some key innovations of IoT-NGIN is that it uses sensor measurements and drone images via federated learning models to improve crop disease prediction, while smart monitoring is performed based on telemetry data collected via a number of sensors perceiving the air, soil, and plant condition. The aerial spraying is triggered through on-device predictions on the drone, as we can see. Also, IoT-NGIN is using cybersecure IoT and AI operations increase yield, safety, and support food security. So what is reusability? Reusability refers to the capability to port already available or similar design processes, components, or systems into the development of new or updated systems. Some of its major benefits are the cost reduction, the reduced time to market, and the quality improvement of the service. So a great advantage of the IoT-NGIN use case for smart agriculture lies in the technical innovation and robustness of the software tools supporting the use case. The use case components are first the machine learning as a service framework, supporting MLOps for model storage and serving, the privacy-preserving federated machine learning, allowing collaborative training of crop disease prediction models among edge nodes, machine learning-based precision agriculture modules, IoT device indexing, supporting the IoT device digital twin at the edge, IoT device access control, applying multi-criteria based access control towards accessing data or providing control commands to IoT edge and cloud nodes, the malicious attack detector able to identify network level attacks which may compromise the overall platform operation, and an IoT vulnerability crawler detecting potential vulnerabilities in IoT and edge nodes. So in our use case, our major usability plans are three. First, interoperability by supporting state-of-the-art protocols for easy integration with existing IoT or edge and cloud solutions, and by developing platform-independent and open-source solution. DevSecOps approaches for software updates at the deployment sites with significantly less effort. And finally, openness of our developed softwares, which means we provide open source code availability with well-known open source licenses and extensive documentations. Some of our technical considerations are the integration of diverse IoT devices, the selection of base open source tools and frameworks, and of course, our open innovation approach. However, we identified some challenges in usability. like inaccurate sustainability planning, which refers to the difficulty of accurately predicting the future needs and requirements of a system. New technologies emergence, because as new technologies are developed and adopted, older systems may become obsolete, making it more difficult to reuse or incorporate them into new systems. And finally, radically new processes emergence, because if a process is fundamentally different from existing processes, it may be difficult to reuse it in existing systems or components. So that's it for my side. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Zacharias. So if I'm mistaken, you gave more of systemic and architecture point of view, not so much how it's applied specifically on the fertilizer use case. Is that correct?
Yes, our idea is more general in reusability of our use case.
Yes, but I believe that it shares the common traits of what mentioned in previous speakers, of trying to find the balance between using already available and design AIoT solutions and open source while developing specific solutions to adapt for each use case. Is that correct?
Yes, but our development solutions are more general and can be applied into other use cases, not only this particular use case. They're developed in that way, so users can take the context of our solutions and apply it in other circumstances.
Hello, this is Terpsi. Let me also add at this point that the architectural image that Zacharias presented before about this use case is actually an instantiation of the component level architecture in this specific use case, which means that it uses components which, Zacharias, can you go to this figure, please? And then the next one with the IoT-NGIN components. Yes. So at this figure, if you look at everything but the green boxes which are on the left, the rest are reusable components developed within IoT-NGIN and are available as open source in our GitLab page. So this is exactly, I would say, the point of reusability. We have developed a set of different components to address processes and functionalities for the next generation IoT, which relate to the digital twin, as we can see from the bottom side, to machine learning through a machine learning operations platform, and also proposing methods for advanced training. And we have done some significant work on evaluating and suggesting new privacy preserving methods for federated learning, which are also applied in here. And also the cybersecurity components, again, applicable not only on this specific use case, but I would say in any IoT system that uses, that is compliant at least to the most popular communication standards. So this use case is just an example, I would say, of applying the IoT-NGIN functionalities for smart agriculture, for the precision aerial spraying. And as I said, these components are available as open source in GitLab. They what we have focused is to also define the open source license for each one of them, so that you know, exploitation is is better, is easier for third-party adopters. And also we provide extensive documentation for each of them. I don't know if you have any further questions on this or anything more for me to clarify.
I only have one remark, because I recognize quite a lot what we are doing also in the IntellioT project. So I think there's a complete similar approach. So you developed generic solutions and you put that into a framework, which we see here, which we also had for IntellioT, and then you fine-tune them, or you take instances of these solutions for the specific domains. And I think that's exactly the approach that demonstrates the reusability of solutions, that you can deploy them in different domains and apply them in different kind of solutions.
Yes, exactly. This is the point of the project, to develop, as you say, generic solutions, adopt the data models adopted are, to the extent possible, generic. Exactly. And also focusing on interoperability through open standards and open APIs.
Yep. So yeah, you're targeting the same approach as we did in the IntellioT project.
Yes, yes. And I have to say that there are also other tools that have been developed in the project, but for this specific use case, we have used these ones.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so I like the approach.
Okay, thanks.
I'm glad you're coinciding in the approach, but yes, definitely, it seems a reasonable way to develop technology in terms that it can be reusable on a broad scale. But then, as we've seen, particularly on agriculture sector, but it's probably specific to every field, then there's needs some specific fine tuning to take place. Now, as you both were mentioning exactly on this and the need of working with applicable and transversal solutions, and also trying to optimize resources and efforts and working with open source design. I think IoT-NGIN's presentation raised up on the point on the constraints and the difficulties on guaranteeing kind of the development of open source designs and adaptability. Could you go in further into that? Like, what is it what presents the main constraints for that unforeseeability of how the tools are going to be developed?
Sorry, Martin, can you repeat the question? Because I had some background noise.
Towards the end of your presentation, you had presented some challenges, right? And I believe that the inaccuracy sustainability planning. So what is that making reference to? The industry, to the design of the use case itself, or actually on the way that technology and open source technology is being developed and redeveloped and contributed by other use cases, or not?
Okay, actually we are referring to the exploitation planning that takes place for the developments involved in this use case. As Zacharias mentioned before, we do our best in order to consider the market dynamics, the evolution of the technology, the evolution of the market. But again, we have to say that the future is unpredictable. So whatever we plan now might render that is not accurate in the future. So to some extent, this is something that we cannot control.
Yeah, maybe one comment also to that, maybe it also applies to our use case or to our project. Yeah, this is always a challenge, but I think especially for new technologies and new processes, but that is exactly why we are working, or why we have standardized interfaces and standardized processes and everything. So that's why we tried in the project to at least try to uphold as many standards as possible, or to use industrially accepted standards. That if new technologies emerge and they use also these standards, which are industrially accepted in the market, then the interoperability should be easier. One cannot guarantee that it would be easier, but as long as you, that's why we have these standards, and as long as you stick to them, then yes, that the interoperability should be easier, but one can never guarantee that.
Yeah, we could find several examples, especially in the software domain that we are involved now. We may develop a solution that is very innovative, that seems to be very, very useful for the domain that it is aimed for. And then we can make it open source, we can have a great community around, and then a new technology emerges, and this is not so useful anymore. So
yeah, open source is always a tricky one, because there are still companies that say if it doesn't cost anything, it can't do anything. So that's, and it's of course also open source code. It needs to be maintained, and if people are seeing like, okay, the last submit to this open source was 2 months ago, nothing is happening, so not sure if this is still supported. But that's always a challenge with open source. But
yeah, it's a big discussion. Open source is a big discussion.
Yeah.
Another example is what we mentioned before about the licenses. We could find the big companies that have adopted open source in their processes. But for example, if they are not very familiar with an open source license that is not that popular, for example, one defined by a single developer, then they are never going to use it, because they're not going to invest effort on investigating the legal aspects behind it. So there are so many issues that have to be considered during open source, and then whether maintenance is going to take place, and how the exploitation over this is going to come, then okay, it is really, really challenging and needs to be very carefully addressed.
So it's not a one-way solution or the right answer on open source. It's from my understanding from this exchange is that also the maintenance, it's highly dependent on how adopted, how frequent user adoption, as well as how usual its exploitation within the industry. Is that correct? So it's vulnerable. It depends on everybody relying on that technology and another open source constantly for it to be maintained and showed applicable. And if they move to technology,
because if you start using open source and you notice that if you have a problem with the source code and you want to know, you want to have support for that, and you just don't get an answer, so why would you use it? Because it just causes you problems. And as mentioned before, but it's about also licenses. So people want to use open source, but it doesn't mean that they want to, if start using it, that they want to bring their code also into the open source. But on the other hand, if it wasn't for open source, we wouldn't be where we are now, I would say, in the market. So it's a very difficult domain.
Yeah, it's a midpoint between collaboration, knowledge transfer, also business kind of interest and incentives.
Yep.
Well, essentially, I guess that is the role of this kind of research and innovation actions and projects that try to bridge that usual.
Yep. But try to convince large companies to make open source.
Yeah, I think that was also what Epsi was mentioning. That usually large companies may not be so keen of bringing into their the models into open source. And just a final question, if you may allow me before we go into the main room, because I saw this was a common access for the 3 use cases. So, and all feel free to answer back. Even when Trebs showed the framework and the architecture, the place given to human centeredness and accessible design and interface, is that intrinsically something within the agriculture use case, or is that something that needs to be given to the seeking for trustworthiness in AI in every use case? So given keeping humans in the loop and keeping the design quite human-centered.
Actually, having a human-centered approach is one of the key objectives of the project. So I would say that yes, it is intrinsic in the system. Of course, we have adapted the solution for this specific use case, but it is a part of the flow to have the human in the loop, and also consider the human needs, the human desires, before performing some action. So there is always the option for the human to do something. There are also interfaces beyond the common ones, the graphical ones, that make it easier for the human to interact with the systems. These relate to the ambient intelligence development that we have introduced, and specifically with software components for device positioning, for applying access control based on multiple criteria, in order to, for example, allow the access to some device only to people that are close to that. So also we have another use case that includes mobile robots, and there we have a functionality for collision avoidance. So, and I have to say that one key aspect is also addressing the data privacy. Also the privacy preserving mechanism for the federated learning, which relate to ethical AI, as you said before, and the preservation of the privacy for the datasets that are used for the training process. So we try to follow a human-centered approach for the development, not just having systems that operate individually, but there is a coherent interaction with the human, respecting also the human rights, the data privacy, and so on.
Thank you, Tepsi. Well, I believe then if nobody has any other questions for each of the panelists, I would like to thank you all for these interventions. Again, I think the takeaways that are common in this use case are the role of federated learning. So that has an increasing role in federated learning in terms of allowing to share, as Panos mentioned, sharing and validating models over exchanging data, and also being able to cope with data privacy, as well as processing information of multiple sources, which is usually quite transversal to many scenarios. Then the moving to the edge and having the greater capacity on devices, I think that is also kind of goes hand in hand from what you've mentioned. I think in use case, the role of the cloud is quite limited to very specific data sharing circumstances, but usually everything takes place near the edge. Thank you, Martin, for nodding. So I know I'm on the right track there. And then, of course, thinking of models and designs that are applicable and transversal to many domains, and then having to see the specific use cases and scenarios for it to be adapted, and opting for open source whenever possible, but still having the limitations, the constraints that you mentioned, that it's highly dependent on adoption, and that there are some market incentives that often operate in a different direction.
I just want to refresh a little bit on our purpose, and our purpose here, of course, it's a reusability workshop, so it makes sense to see how we can reuse from the project ideas, how we can reuse intellectual property, how we can reuse software, and so on. But I think also on the technical and scientific side, it's good to exploit this opportunity for experience sharing, sharing of best practice, sharing of knowledge. So this time, I think because we have 4 presentations, it will be best to open the floor for 1 or 2 questions after each presentation, and then exploit whatever buffer we have in the end. But again, and this goes for all the 4 speakers, you have 10 minutes, but feel free to take a couple of minutes more if needs be to make a proper presentation. So don't rush, take the time so that you make a presentation which is a proper one. So René, the floor is yours. Maybe you want to introduce yourself, your project again. We have some more people here or different people here, and then give your presentation. And thanks for supporting us with 2 talks in today's event.
Sure. Thanks, John. Yeah, introducing myself again, I'm René Griessel from Bielefeld University, and we are managing the VEDLIoT project. And this talk will be about requirements engineering. So this is something the partner from University Gothenburg is bringing in. So hopefully you can answer all your questions in the end. But let me give you an overview of VEDLIoT. So here's our big picture. So VEDLIoT has the foundation of hardware. So we are having a lot of microservices available and providing a specialized family of hardware platforms I presented in the first presentation today. And on top of that, we have the middleware with a lot of interesting tools. So these micro tools here are open source, for example, and the embedded toolchain is not open source, but it's very interesting because it's doing some automated enhancement to machine learning models. Someone is talking in the background. Can someone mute?
Propositions that we are just analyzing or considering. So currently for the...
can you mute everybody if you are moderating, because I don't have the privilege.
Yeah, the moderator should be allowed to mute. Oh, thanks. And and on top we have the applications from 3 different fields. So the smart home use case, industrial use case, and the automotive use case. And plus an open call with 10 very interesting use cases from various fields. And in this talk, I'm going to talk about a framework for requirements. So I will basically go to this big picture. So this is a little bit hard to understand, but this is basically the complete framework where you in the end don't need every part of it that is shown here, but this is highly customizable and can adapt to every business case or use case, and can be tweaked so that it really fits what you're trying to have in the end. And we came up with this framework because the European Union bring out some new rules regarding AI models that you really have to show how you got to your model and that it is safe and works in the way that you trained it. So we started with an architecture where you in the end can bring all the stakeholders together, that everyone knows its part, but also can trace what you have done. And to come there, I will now shortly go over it, how to use this framework, and then you will see that this simplifies when you're going to your use case. I mean, depending on your use case, if your use case is very complex, then this will also stay very complex in the end. But to use this architectural framework, you have to do these 5 steps, and I will show them now in detail. So you will start with the identification of the clusters of concern. So in the beginning, you've seen that there were a lot of clusters of concern at the top. And what do you have to do there? So you have a stakeholder that has a use case, and mostly in our case in the project, and they determine what clusters of concern do we have. So do we need to use a machine learning model? Do we have a hardware that we want to use? So there are a lot of things that are known from the beginning, which are important to the project. So every cluster will be identified in the first step, and afterwards we are defining levels of abstractions. So this starts on a very high level, where you maybe just have the idea of what your system should be capable to do, and goes to a low level as far as you need it. So for example, if you want to write a piece of software, you don't have to go down to the level of hardware, but maybe to the level of communication. So the second part is you have to identify your levels of abstraction you really need. And then when you know your clusters of concern and the levels of extraction you need, then you see your use case. And for example, for VEDLIoT, we have already hardware in the project. So one of these boxes, of these lower boxes, could be the hardware that is already available, so that at this point you're filling in the things that you already have in your project. And this, for VEDLIoT or for the automotive use case, looked like this. So we had a context where we trying to do obstacle avoidance in the form of pedestrians, and we had some constraints from the manufacturing point of view and from the run level type of view. So we already filled in this and had a look on all these clusters of concern. So for example, for learning, we knew that we have 3 different classes. We have the pedestrians in the line, the pedestrians on the road, and an empty road. And for this learning, we also needed a machine learning model and hardware. So these were the things that were there in the forehand. And then we started over and added all the missing blocks in here. So for example, for the hardware, we already knew that we are going to use this vehicle platform, but for the runtime in the end, we need to do more test and validation. So with this framework, we can really show all the steps we did to achieve the use case in the end. And this is then very well documented. And for example, if you are using, or if you are the one that is doing the AI model, then you can have a look on this framework and you directly see, oh, my model needs to know these three classes, and it will run and it will run on that hardware. So you have direct links to the left and to the right requirements, and know exactly what to do. And yeah, this helps every designer. So it is directly defined what you have to do in your project, and it is very well documented. And yeah, in the end, when you have all these blocks, you are connecting the boxes with relations. So yeah, basically that every box knows where it's depending from or what other boxes are depending on it. And as I said in the forehand, this basically came up because of these regulations of the European Parliament on AI learning. And especially for the automotive use case, it's very important that we are meeting these requirements. And yeah, it gives an overview of all the necessary quality aspects, safety, security, ethical, and privacy aspects for, in our case, our use cases. But in general, this can be mapped on every application you're going to design or product you want to bring up and get legal in the European Union. Yeah, this is all for the requirements engineering framework. Oh, by the way, what I forgot to mention is that this is already published in a journal last month, and also publicly available, so that everyone can use this.
Thank you very much, René. So I guess this is, well, it's not a question, just a clarification, and then I open the floor to question. So this is a methodology that you consider reusable, right?
Exactly.
For the edge IoT continuum, if you need to gather requirements, right, and to produce some designs involving hardware and so on, you think that this is an outcome, right, that can be reused by a project, right? That's
exactly, yeah.
Point here. Okay, and may I ask if there are any questions to René before being, the bad guy that asking my questions? So may I ask for any questions from the audience or any comments? How does this compare to what other projects have been doing to elicit requirements and to produce designs? Are there any comments also on what other projects have been doing? They are also welcome. Please feel free to raise your hand and ask your question. In the meantime, I think what I wanted to ask, from the beginning of this presentation, right, is if this is something that you came up to fulfill your needs, or if you are feeling the gap, if you are feeling a gap here. For example, aren't there, ISO, IEEE methodologies to get requirements for systems like this? So are you feeling a gap, or it was something that you designed that actually met the needs of your project, right? And maybe a connected question. I saw the paper in Elsevier. How can one access this for reuse, right? For example, if we want to publish it in NGIoT website for other project to use this in Cloud Edge, what's the best way to do this? You have a white paper, you have a public deliverable, and so on. So two questions actually, right? If you are filling in a gap and how you position yourself to ISO IEEE methodologies for this purpose, and second, what's the best way for us in UIoT to disseminate this and to promote to the IoT community for reuse?
So regarding filling this gap, as I said at the beginning, I'm not the one who did this this framework, but from what I remember, so Hans Martin did a lot of research before bringing up this framework, and he showed in some presentations a lot of IEEE slides where, let's say, the fundamentation of this framework comes from. So I don't, yeah, maybe filling a gap is the right word, but maybe it's also a quite nice combination of the IEEE approaches that are now focused towards this new regulations from the EU. And I think IEEE is not focusing on what the EU is doing. So let's say this is extending and combining the frameworks to come up with a model that works, especially in this case, for example, especially for our use cases, but which is, from what I know and what Hans Martin promotes, is very versatile and can be mapped to yeah, any other, let's say, use case or business goal in the industry. And can you repeat the second question?
The second question is, what is the best way, you know, for us to disseminate this to the community, basically, right? And you know, say that you know, here is a methodology, right? If you want to use it, you know, because that's especially, you know, for EU projects, that's always useful, because people start projects and they don't always know, you know, how to structure their requirements. So what's the best way, you know, for example, for some to take something and put it to the NGIoT website?
I mean, this is not a software at that point. This is more like you're going into your Excel and you are starting doing the steps that we promoted, and then you are step by step.
It's a paperwork, right? It's a paperwork mostly.
Exactly,
right?
yeah. And with the publication from Hans Martin in Ellsworth, you should be able to do this and to come also to a resolution for your project. And I mean, for sure, if you are interested and have questions, you can always contact Hans Martin, since he's also first author of the publication, and he will be very happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Rene. I don't know if you're going to be around, you know, for the discussion in the end. Certainly, you need, you know, to relax a little bit. If you can be here at the end of the Q&A, I think that would be useful.
I will be here.
Thank you very much. So
Thanks.
Maybe we can advance to the next presentation, Nikita.
Right. Let me.
We have done the sound check, right? So it's you know, we did the sound check, you know, before.
Yeah, exactly for that. Just so
IoT-NGIN, feel free to introduce yourself, to introduce your project. You know, nominally you have 10 minutes, but as I said, feel free to give a proper presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Here, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name is, okay, so just a second, I still see cameras. Okay, yeah. So my name is Nikita Akmakin. I'm representing Forum Virium Helsinki here. Sorry for my a bit broken voice. My role in the IoT-NGIN project is more kind of a living lab coordinator and the work package leader. So the focus of this presentation really would be to speak about the reusability plan for one of the use cases of the project, which is the traffic flow prediction and parking prediction use case. So with this presentation, I really hope to stay a bit more on a high level, but let's see what comes out of this. So the IoT-NGIN project in general has a bunch, I think, ideology commonalities with other projects we have, but it introduces the research and innovation concepts, you know, to fuel up the European next generation internet in general. And something that is behind the IoT-NGIN, I mean, uniquely probably, is four cornerstones: is empowering the edge cloud with federated on-device intelligence, enforcing interoperability and data sovereignty, which really is important for the reusability planning as well, ensuring trust and cybersecurity, and introducing novel human-centric interaction based on augmented reality. This four cornerstones really are kind of followed by the three very important items here, which is the kind of the digital technologies, I mean, such as 5G and big data, next generation IoT, and this all is kind of really followed by the kind of business modeling, which we also do. So you're really creating the potential for commercialization of some of the trials or well, use cases, depends which we are speaking about. So really the focus of this presentation is very specific the use case. I'm not going to go too much into the technical details, but I would say, like, from the kind of a pitch line is that this use steps towards mobility as a service. But the difference is that it doesn't really follow up the route of Helsinki only. So I mean, but more like a Helsinki-Tallinn cross-border experience from the mobility as a service perspective. So we have developed within the project a system. This is the IoT engine supplies a variety of tools which are integrated to a so-called finest twin cities platform. This is a platform used for federating the data between Tallinn and Helsinki. Finest basically stands for Finland, Estonia. Then we have a so-called smart junction component. This is also kind of a project, but this is acting more as an infrastructure for this use case, consisting of a variety of traffic systems like cameras, radars, IoT devices, lidars, and you can probably see here the example of a lidar, which is like a camera radar combination, and that is installed on the congestion area marked with the blue line on the map. And Jätkäsaari shortly is like really an island which acts as a harbor island for passengers, like mainly coming from Tallinn, which counts, I think, up to 4.5 million of passengers per year. So you might imagine the congestion every 3 hours when the ferry arrives. So by using the data and the system above, we train the machine learning and AI models to predict the traffic flow, and therefore, once predicted, we are able to reroute the traffic and reroute the transport, or, well, for example, public transport in case of the congestions or something. So we apply the deep learning models to predict the real-time traffic situation awareness, and in pretty much a variety of unpredictable conditions. Those include weather, delays, accidents, and, well, you name it. And additionally to that, the same data, we really hope, still in progress, to really work on parking prediction. So the congestion and vehicle data really allows us to predict the parking demand and to suggest the end users the best parking spot, well, in the Jätkäsaari area, which you can see here. So this is just to quickly show that, of course, we are in Finland, so there is the conditions change. We cannot only track cars and people, but we also have to track the conditions of the road, which really highly affects as well the traffic. And this is just a quick well, demonstration how the whole infrastructure of the smart junction specifically works. So this is basically just kind of a snapshot of real-time movement of cars. So we are actually tracking the very most congestive street of the Jätkäsaari area. So now jumping to more a component level, the IoT engine side, I think that there are a bunch of components, of course, created during the project, but I think since the focus of this presentation is really to jump on the reusability plant, a bit stay high level and really try to see how to re-implement this, how to transition this from prototype to more kind of a production, I would say, version. I think it's important to focus on ones that are actually assisting to reach the reusability plan objectives. So the first of all is the smart junction enhancement. Smart junction is the infrastructure, as I said, and the idea behind is really that we have implemented at least two components under the enhancement process of the smart junction. One is the device indexing, allowing accessing data from the smart junction in easy way, and then the big data analytics block has the machine learning as a service, helping us to easier deploy and develop the machine learning services, as well to actually improving the machine learning models out of the box using the IoT engine. So this is really, can be said that it's TRL6 combined with the smart junction, I would say. So together with one of our partners, Aalto, we have developed the so-called installer app. So installer app is an application to easier deploy the system level hardware. So again, we are speaking about reusability. So it means that we have to deploy some of the hardware pieces faster, which will end up with the reduction of the cost of the system. So the installer app really used the IoT device access control block of the IoT engine, and that really helped us in automatically add devices to the management platform by scanning the QR codes using a camera. So this is also part of the system. And lastly, I mean, there is finest twins platform as mentioned. We really hope that IoT-NGIN as such in general will really be the enhancement in itself. And finest twins is already a production piece used in Estonia and Finland. So let's jump to the reusability plan, actually. So the transition that I'm speaking about is really from the prototype, from the, I would even say, the most minimum viable product that we have developed during the project, and more towards the operational AI-driven traffic management system. So the objective is I mean, those are very classical, I would say, but these are applicable very much to this use case. So increasing the rate of smart junction reuse across the transport department is really the objective here. Reduction of development and deployment time is one, and you've seen on the previous slide, there are actually technical components helping us with that. Improving the quality of analytics behind the system. So again, it's really a very generic thing, but still ensuring the interoperability between the AI-driven traffic system and the existing traffic system. This is actually very important because even inside the traffic department, there are differences in the actuality of the traffic components within even one city. So we have to really ensure that those systems are interoperable. So the focus of those objectives really is that with the increased rate of smart junction, we hope to enable a wider use of the system in general, not only specifically within the Helsinki area. With the reduction of the development deployment time, for example, using the machine learning as part of this job, the reducing the total cost of the system would be the benefit, actually. And the quality of analytics brings the ensuring us the viability as an end product in general, because we have to be sure that the data is well qualified. The interoperability also brings the expandability. So in that case, we hope to make the system open and to be able to expand it even outside of Helsinki. So that doesn't have to stay in the capital of Finland. So with that said, I mean, shortly, there are some considerations. They are not too much exploded, so we are staying on a high level still. But the consideration are that the technical complexity, especially comparing with some of the existing traffic system components, the lack of standardization of such what I call AI-driven systems. Since this is the product that we aim at really looking at from the cross-border perspective, there is also the fact of segregated systems. I mean, Tallinn has one traffic system, Helsinki has another. This is a very big consideration. The upgradability of the system as well. So if some of the components are too old, I mean, I cannot imagine upgrading those in case of upgrading, not actually replacing. Replacing would be probably easier one. And support of the system, of course, as well, because some of the components are coming from startups. I mean, from even the smart junction is just a startup. So support of the system is rather important. So some of the challenges were actually identified during the project, and I would say that we were successfully able to resolve some. So the stakeholder engagement is surely one. We had to really involve a lot of city officials, traffic management agencies, and even citizens to really get the end user perspective. So surely stakeholder engagement in further reusability implementation would be still an issue. Then the scalability, again, some of the components might be also the reason for the scalability issue, and sustaining the system in general in over the long term requires like much more planning that we had during the project. And lastly, it was already mentioned in one of these presentations today, the data quality and availability. Not just that we need extra data to teach the AI and machine learning models, but also how consistent is the data, how frequently are we getting those? Are there any actually data provision agreements to secure that in the future the system will be operating as it is right now? Because some of the data sources are actually historical and well, old data. So this is a very obvious slide, but addressing the challenges is nothing more than just that the transportation department has to really carefully plan and allocate resources to that, and very importantly, engage the innovation stakeholders. I mean, for surely implementing the reusability plan would mean actually involving and following the challenges that were actually shown on the previous slide. So to summarize this, I mean, three really kind of, I think, important things exploded from this presentation is that the traffic flow prediction and parking prediction use case demonstrates the potential for leveraging diverse data sources and AI models for efficient traffic management and parking prediction. The reusability plan was able to actually showcase four main objectives, which is the smart junction reuse, a reduction of development time, improving the analytics, and ensure on interoperability. But that comes with challenges such as technical complexity, standardization, and maintenance. And lastly, of course, we have to really ensure successful implementation of the reusability plan. We have to prioritize stakeholder involvement, ensure the data quality and actually the agreements with the data, and plan scalability. I think that is like really the 3 points from this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita, for the presentation. I would like to ask if there are any questions to this presentation. I think we have other projects, right, in this cluster of projects that have similar, use cases, right? Maybe I don't know if from Assist-IoT is here, right? But then there are similar use cases. Now, well, as people think, please, I would like to not to be the only one to ask questions. I just would like to give you, my questions on the issue of the replication of the system, right?
Yes.
I think from my experience, the challenging part of all these transportation relating systems is the data, right? Because you have a part of this system, of this application, which is localized, right? And unless you have a standard way to get the same data or similar data, right, in semantics, in format, but also in semantics, then you make the replicability challenging. I'm not saying that this system cannot work, right, in another system, but I'm making that you are doing, one more IoT engine exercise to make it work, right, for another city where the data sources are not similar at the technical level or at the semantic level. So this is one challenge I see, aside from more technological issues like which are the data sources giving this data. So the systems I've seen in the smart cities area that are really replicable are those which have very standardized data and very standardized scope. For example, parking, right? Because parking is a very standardized exercise, and it doesn't really matter if you park in London or if you park in Helsinki. It's very similar, right? Or civic engagement, that kind of fix my street apps, because everybody's using the same app. So I'm wondering, if you make any provisions for this thing, in your system, right? Like, how you can accommodate data that would be potentially different in format or in semantics.
Yeah. So, I mean, you are very correct that the whole issue with the whole cross-border context in general is the difference of not only the data sources, but the data models behind, the service level agreements behind, and the way how we actually provision it from one city to another. So, I mean, there is no clear answer on your question between Tallinn and Helsinki, but what this Finest Twins project was actually doing is exactly finding the common grounds for not only kind of using the already existing data in one common single way, but also to actually start generating common data models between the cities. And actually one of the KPIs is finding those data models. So we have, for example, one of the data sources is the radio alerting system, which has absolutely same data model with, between Tallinn and Helsinki. And this one actually is used for acquiring the accidents on streets. So I would say that this is a very good example of how, in general, all the data sources where they should basically go. That the radio alerting system is same. We follow same service level agreements, and we federate that same data in the same way. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but really this is kind of the focus, is to make more of such data sources. And specifically for this traffic management project, we were trying to actually stick with the what you said, like standard data sources, not going too much into some unique and generated specifically for this use case data. So it practically does use the standard data from both Tallinn and Helsinki.
But what, for example, what type of data formats you are using, right? Or what types of semantics you are using? You have some standard data model for this, or? I mean, the cross-border thing is another, level of complexity that I didn't touch in my question, right? I mean, because the cross-border, is I don't take it for granted, right? All these cross-border services can be really challenging, right? And maybe Tallinn and Helsinki, they have also some bonding, right? So it's easier to solve this. But if you take totally unrelated countries, it would be even more difficult. But at the technical level, are you taking some measures to if I'm to use this in another city, how do I really integrate my data? What do you give me to integrate my data to the IoT engine system?
Yeah, I'm not myself an expert in data, but specifically from the finest twins perspective, we are, I think, of course, following some common data models for the and data formats between Tallinn and Helsinki. There were no yet plans or ideas how do we actually replicate this within other cities. Of course, this is the most complex part, but not sure I can answer this format question really, because what happens behind this is really not kind of my topic, to be honest, in that sense. But yes, the finest twins is really it does the data modeling for both the cities, and that is kind of the offering of the platform itself. So the formatting the data to the common basis as the product.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so maybe you'll be around, right? Probably for the final.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nikita, and maybe we can move on to the next presentation. Jussi, right? INGENIOUS, yes.
Yes. Hello. Good
afternoon. We can hear you. So yeah, we've met before. Yes, with Awake AI in some of the NGIoT trainings. So thank you for being here today. Please feel free to introduce yourself, your project, and give the presentation. Take your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And a brief comment to Nikita. I hope you can follow my presentation also, because I see a lot of potential synergy between your case and what I am now presenting. So we focus more on the, let's say, combining seaside traffic with the landside truck traffic and that kind of traffic predictions and analysis. And
we can see the presentation.
I think you see, are you muted right now, actually?
Yes, we can see your presentation. We lost you for a while, right? At least on my end. I don't know if others have the same situation.
Yes, he seems to be muted since he started with the presentation.
Okay. So please, Jussi, you can.
Okay, you hear me now?
And now we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I don't know why it muted me automatically. All right, so proceeding to my presentation, I'm representing the INGENIOUS project, which focuses on IoT solutions along the universal supply chain, so focusing on multimodal logistics around port operations, especially. So looking at sea vessel traffic, what happens in the port, and truck and train traffic. And my topic is about predictive analytics solutions for more efficient traffic planning in maritime logistics. Specifically, I'm talking about a use case on situational understanding and predictive models in smart logistics scenarios. Now, the motivation for this topic, this use case, is that the traffic rates and volumes of trade, especially in, for example, large container ports, is causing a lot of congestion cases, both in the seaside and on land side. And ports generally are missing this kind of holistic view and situational awareness of especially this what will be happening in the future. There is no predictive capabilities on the traffic levels and how these different multimodal traffic components affect each other. And in short, what we are trying to do in this use case is to enhance this situational understanding, especially in a kind of predictive way of events in maritime ports and terminals by collecting all the relevant data from the different IoT and other systems in the port. So this includes global vessel traffic information, port call information, cargo operations information, and truck traffic information as it is seen for the port. And a specific technical objective for us is to analyze and predict the truck traffic rates at the port gate. So how many trucks are, for example, coming out of the port in the future, and what will be the turnaround times of trucks in the port. So this is to represent the possible high congestion scenarios in ports. And how we do this is we integrate and connect a lot of data sources, everything that we have available around the port operations, including port community systems, machine-to-machine platforms, gate access systems, and global vessel information systems. Based on these datasets, we develop artificial intelligence algorithms, machine learning models for predicting the different components in the multimodal cargo flow, especially ending up with the truck turnaround times. And as a final output of the use case, we have developed a cloud-based service which provides this kind of web dashboard where you can visualize all of these component models and what they produce. Now, very shortly, how we built this, we collect a lot of different data sets from different types of sources. Some of those are public, some of those are private, and this is kind of the challenging part. It was a little bit also discussed just a few minutes ago. Access to the right data is kind of critical in this work. In this project, we have quite sufficient data, so we extract relevant features from the data on the vessel locations, vessel arrivals and departures at the port, container discharges, and how long containers spend time in the port. And we build different ML models to represent all of these variables. So starting with vessel estimated time of arrival prediction, to cargo exchange volume prediction, to estimating the time that containers spent in the port, to different kind of, let's say, heuristics for how the traffic overall works in the port. Of these components, the vessel ETA prediction is already developed into commercial use during this project. So I would say it is on TRL level 8 or maybe even 9 soon. We are scaling this service globally. And the other components are currently demonstrated in an online service in Port of Valencia, and we are targeting commercial pilots for these as soon as possible. And here's a snapshot of this web service dashboard that we developed to visualize the outputs. So on the top, you see the illustration of this kind of time events of vessels leaving the previous ports, arriving to Valencia, and then container events kind of flowing out of the vessel port calls. On the bottom left, we show this kind of metric for container exit rates in Valencia, and on the bottom right, we show these predictions on the truck turnaround times several weeks forward. Now, what is the kind of commercial or technical use case on a broader sense for this kind of development? In the middle, we have our AI system, which produces traffic flow and turnaround predictions. And I would say that Well, the kind of organizations that, for example, Nikita was talking about, city traffic management and port resource planning organizations can use this kind of information to make their planning more efficient. But there has been also some interest from hinterland and cargo carriers because it is, of course, interesting for example, truck companies to understand what are the worst congestion times in ports. Now, of course, one challenge is that the organizations providing the data for this are not necessarily the same as the ones that would be using this system, and that is kind of a challenge for the reuse, and which we try to tackle also in this development, partly by developing the models so that we would not need all the private data for running this kind of system, but mainly in kind of setting it up and training the different component models. So as a summary of this work, I've tried to list here the main challenges for reuse, especially from a commercial sense, and what we have done to tackle those. So one which is very big issue, especially in maritime, is the reluctance to share data between actors in the port ecosystem. And this is often to do with some kind of perceived or real commercial sensitivity. And as I said, we try to tackle this by using potentially sensitive data, mainly in training predictive models. But in the deployment, hopefully we can implement this using only publicly available data or very little kind of additional features to that. And there are some regulation limitations, possibly like GDPR issues, which we have technically addressed in this project by obfuscating some sensitive features taken into the machine learning process. For example, truck license plates as such are not of interest for us, but we just need to be able to identify the same truck as it is coming in and going out of the port. But the actual license plate can be, let's say, obfuscated while still doing what we need with the data. Then from a more commercial sense, there is often a lack of technical capability in port organizations, especially these port authorities, to integrate new services and data sources if they don't have their own IT departments, for example. So this kind of services, products should be made as easy to adopt as possible, and we develop these kind of APIs and possibly kind of data scraping solutions for getting the data, and provide the services to cloud services so that you don't need infrastructure to run these, and provide these kind of web-based applications which are easy to access. Of course, there is often still a reluctance to adopt additional software applications in organizations, as especially in ports, there are many systems which all address kind of different parts of the operations. So promising commercial approach is then to work with the existing software system providers to provide this kind of analytics capabilities through APIs, application programming interfaces. So then you can just enhance the existing software and not have to kind of take in another application component. Very shortly, it was an overview of our use case. I would be happy to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jussi. I was actually, I thought that when I saw the previous presentation, right, I thought that it was Assist-IoT that is doing things with Port of Valencia. I forgot that your project, right, is doing similar things. So I think there are some very nice, I mean, your presentation spots some nice challenges of that are spelled out, in the EU data strategy, right? The data spaces and so on, like the data sovereignty, the regulatory compliance, the incentives for data sharing, and of course, the sharing in a way that you you protect data. So I was wondering, who is, you said that you are scaling this. So which are, the additional ports or hubs that are, using these systems, or that you are planning to onboard? That's one question. And another question is the data sharing a problem also inside the port ecosystem, like, from different maritime stakeholders inside the same port? Or it is,
yes,
only the cross border or the cross administrative stakeholder problem that we saw in the previous use case? So these are my two spontaneous questions out of this presentation.
Yeah, okay. So, well, I can address the possible, let's say, use cases on a very abstract level, as we don't have yet kind of commercial pilots agreed, but interest we have had, for example, from this.
But you said that this is TRL 8 to 9, right? So you.
Oh yes, okay. The components that are already commercialized is the vessel prediction side. So, for example, there we are working with.
This is used individually. This is used independently of the rest of the system. This is what you mean?
Yes, yes. So it is like one module which is part of this, which we have commercialized, and we are providing that, for example, for this vessel traffic services providers for all ports in Finland, for example. So they are distributing these predictions then to the Finnish ports, and we are negotiating with that kind of partners in other countries, and also this kind of, let's say, existing maritime operations planning system providers. So as I said, we can provide APIs for them to enhance their application by adding this information, so that we don't have to try to sell to port or authorities new applications. So that's one use case. And for this broader analytics pipeline, there has been interest, let's say, from larger port authorities which are lacking this kind of technical capabilities, and also some bigger hinterland operators, trucking companies, who would be interested in understanding the traffic rates better. As for the data availability, yes, there are problems within the port community. So, for example, terminal operators do not share all data with port authorities, and different, like port authorities may own the gate traffic data, terminal operators may own the cargo operations data, and we need to be somehow friendly with both of those to put everything together. That is one of the challenges.
Okay, thank you. Let's give some time, to the last presentation, right? And then we can revisit, right? And maybe I think in the end it would make sense, to have a sort of experience sharing discussion, right? So what each project can learn from the other. So Carlos. Thank you, Lucy.
I'm here. I think you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, I'm Carlos Guardiola. I'm from the sorry, I will leave this. I'm from the Polytechnic University of Valencia, and I'm here for presenting the automotive diagnostics pilot of Assist-IoT. Well, I put also the number of Klaus Schustritz from Ford, because most of the pilot goes together with Ford, and he's co-author of many of the contents here. So basically what we have in place is just a very nice vehicle. This is a micro hybrid vehicle. So it has a diesel engine, but also some fancy advanced functions. And what in our pilot, what we are doing is really connecting the vehicle to an IoT architecture that would be Assist-IoT. So the thing we actually are doing is just connecting, really bridging the powertrain control module, which is the core of the control of the engine, with the cloud system. So we are able just to interface all the different signals. So we have not, I would not say real-time access, but high-speed access at 100 Hertz to several thousands of variables within the PCM. In addition to that, we have a collection of smart sensors, so we can collect different emissions in the exhaust, and also high-speed sensors as in-cylinder pressure, combustion metrics, and things like that. And in the project, the people from Neways, one of the companies involved, they are developing a electronics specific hardware specific for the pilot. So the idea is finally running the system with this integrated gateway and computation, smart electronics for doing all the edge implementation of the system. Well, so far this is not working, and we have a place as a placeholder. So we have a router for connecting to the network, and we have a Raspberry Pi, which is making just taking the place for this hardware that will be implemented in software. We also are planning to introduce some human interface. So we have already tactile screen. We will have some augmented reality for maintenance operation, but I don't want you to get a wrong idea. We are not just focusing into a single vehicle, but we are looking into fleets. So we want to tackle the possibility of using the approach not only for demonstrating in a single vehicle, but using a single vehicle as an element of a complete fleet that we will be emulating. And we are thinking in fleets of the numbers of hundreds of thousands of vehicles. So this is, let's say, our goal in demonstration for the project. And we are thinking of the fleet as the fleet for a manufacturer. So the manufacturer has many vehicles already in the market, already in use. And we find that there will be a necessity of doing some emission monitoring, doing some supervision, being able to detect which vehicles are outliers to the emissions and are not behaving in a proper way, and then running some vehicle diagnostics. So basically what we want to cover is the necessity for the manufacturer just to supervise the different vehicles it already has on the market, and being able to apply, let's say, advanced or get advanced metrics of how things are working, how many vehicles they have, what's the emission profile, and then being able to apply new calibrations to modify the firmware of the vehicle, follow up, being able to filter per use conditions, per emission profile, set active monitoring, doing some data analytics, and why not identifying and running models on the different vehicles. So we find to provide support to all this vertical integration from fleet monitoring to final vehicle implementation. So that goes with a couple of use cases, and this is the diagram of how we arrange that. One is the in-service conformity verification. In this case, what we have is different vehicles. Each one of the vehicles has the hardware, that will be the GUEN, and then we are able just to get some data from them, which is just sent to a long-term storage. This LTSC is this long-term storage, and then the OEM is just able to access the data for getting relevant metrics, and when necessary, performing calibration updates that are just downloaded to the different vehicles, and with some authorizations and some identification, and then some special conditions, we are just able to deploy the new firmware into the vehicles. Okay, so here what we mark as squares are the different, what we call enablers of the projects. Enablers are just containerized services that can be reused from the different applications. And this is important for us because while still in the vehicles we have components which are specific for the application, most of the software we are developing is exactly the same as the one used in the different pilots for the project or the open callers. So we just try to do that. From the perspective of our system, the more important is the smart orchestrator, which is in charge of making everything run or just setting up the system. The long-term storage, which provides the database for all the data. And here we are talking about a lot of data, hundreds of measurement channels and vehicles with different number of sensors and quality of sensors. And then the edge data broker, which is just able to communicate the information from the vehicles to the cloud and from the cloud to the vehicles. In our second use case, we also tackle diagnostics. So the structure is quite similar, but here we want to be able just to have some pool of methods that is growing, that is just using data from the long-term storage, and then is deployed into the vehicle. So we are able to run models locally into the vehicles and just evolve this pool of methods. And also we want to provide some support for the maintenance of the vehicle. So some augmented reality for the inspection of the vehicle or just fixing problems that could appear. Okay, the implementation, as I said, for me, the core is smart edge data broker and long-term storage. So the thing is that in this pilot, we needed to just to take into consideration the very specific conditions. So we have mobile power plants, there are vehicles, so we have dynamic IPs, probably private IPs because of the carrier. And we need to address for scalability. So we need to be able to set up the system in a way that adapts to a growing number of IoT devices and is able just to manage even in that case. And we are able to balance load for just accommodating to this variability in the number of nodes. Also, we have components that are within the edge implementation in the vehicle. So we have a number of functions that have been developed for the vehicle that have some analytics of the driving profile, some diagnostics, sensor modeling, and so on. And these are, some of them are just run in the edge, while others are just run in the cloud for doing fleet metrics and global emission metrics modeling. And we are just able to apply a set of policies to the edge. So for example, just keeping relevant data streamed to the cloud, while most of the data is just kept locally and just erased if it's found not to be relevant, because we have a limit into the data we can send. For the cloud implementation, as I said, we go into using a number of elements that can be reused. So we have containers running in Kubernetes, and here you have a view of the current cluster that is today running in our server. So we have this smart orchestrator. We have several connectors for the edge data broker. We have several because we need to just to accommodate the load and to balance the load between the different connections. We have some Kafka connectors from the edge data broker to the long-term storage. Then we have the long-term storage, and for sure we have external API that allows to call the long-term storage for getting results and being able to build different services or functionalities over this. On the edge implementation, the thing is similar, a little simpler. Here we have the edge data broker, we have the diagnostics functions, and also we have a set of open callers. So an important thing for us is that we provide exactly the same access for the third parties which are just developing activities within the project, so they can use the different enablers and they just need to compute to put their calculation within a pod which is running in our cluster. Well, and then as I said, for the reusability, I think that the architecture itself was conceived for reusability. We are currently, as I would say, in tier 7, so that means that we are testing in relevant environment, but still is not commercial. And as I said, most is within different containers, and the different parts can be installed independently, so we can just tailor the system to our needs. This is being tested, the architecture, in 4 pilots plus a set of cascade open code projects. For the case of the diagnostics pilot, we have 3 projects that use different hardwares, and the hardwares just connect to the architecture and use all the communication from Assist-IoT, and later retrieve the data from the long-term storage, and they build their own web functions. And we also thought about the scalability of the system, and we are really stressing the limits into testing for fleets, let's say, at least proportional to the final fleet from a given manufacturer. So we have in mind this usability of the architecture in real life use for commercial fleets. So we are able to support load balancing, and also the smart configuration that we will need to be automatically when you have a complex fleet. And finally, I would like to highlight that there is for the last 2 or 3 months the proposal for Euro 7 regulation for vehicles, and onboard measurement is to be implemented as mandatory. So I must say that we are already in the track, because we are just presenting now tools in the components for this diagnostics and monitoring of the fleet that at least from a legal perspective would be required. I'm not sure if that would be our architecture or our components, but there will be a need in the market for implementing this kind of tools. And that was all. Thank you very much. And well, I pass the floor to the coordinator.
Thank you, Carlos. Very interesting. I have some questions. You know, this is actually an area that many companies, right, and many projects are working on, right? I mean, not only in the automotive sector, but also manufacturing, energy, how you remote monitor assets, how you. So for the scalability, so I'm trying to understand how the reusability works in your case, because I see that you presented the scalability analysis in the end, but I think isn't the best thing to give the analysis in a form of a cloud service, like software as a service. So let me tell you how I imagined it, right? You give me a box, then I put this box into my fleet, right, into parts of my fleet, and then I automatically get your service on the cloud, right? Is this how it works? I think for me, that's the simplest way to do this, right? Otherwise, it's a little bit tedious, to deploy the hardware, to configure the hardware, right, to make the model.
Just the thing is, one of the things that we are discussing a lot is how the future is going to be from the manufacturer perspective. So whenever you have a vehicle, you are manufacturing hundreds of thousands of that vehicle, but you have many variants. So it's not that easy as I just put the same to all the variants. And what we can expect in the future is that these variants occur because there are several options for the final user. So when you just buy the vehicle, it can be different. But also there are many technical questions while you are manufacturing some some of the parts can be different because you are just changing the supplier, or you need to recalibrate for some small variations, some lot, some batches. There could be many things happening. So what we think for that is that at some point we need to provide a control for the manufacturer, just to filter the complete fleet by use, by, I don't know, the supplier, the kind of the region where it's working and like that. So you are able to just to select a subset of the fleet and then deploy automatically to that the software you want.
So the hardware is supposed to be deployed by the OEM, right?
The hardware, yes, but the software we can change later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you know that's one of the challenges in all these cases, right? That I don't want to, if I put this into my facility, right? I want all the configuration to be automatic, right? I don't want to, run another integration each time. And yes, and you are very right? The machine learning model that works for a Tesla does not work for a BMW, right? So,
no, that is, but even for a BMW, what's working for a vehicle with one engine will not work for the other. And then if you are just manufacturing a model for 10 years, perhaps the version you have at the beginning has not much to do with the version you have at the end. So we are entering in a very complicated framework, and this is why we are focusing in being able at least to help the manufacturer how to order this and how to being able to filter the data according to the different versions and try to do this in an automatic way. And this is what the smart orchestrator is finally doing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Carlos. Very interesting. I would like to ask if there are any questions to any of our speakers. Actually, our time is up, theoretically, right? But I think it's good that we run the Q&A process with each one of you guys. I don't know, Sam, if we have some more time, or whether we can take some questions from the audience.
Yeah,
our timeline, please give us some guidance.
We've agreed to move past back 5 minutes, so we can take one more question or two more questions if anybody has anything to add.
We've seen different use cases, and we've seen actually, the first presentation was about a methodology for capturing requirements at the edge and IoT of the computer continuum, including requirements for machine learning performance, power efficiency, and so on. Now, this is well documented, it is published, so maybe it can be one methodology of interest to the community. We could even advertise it and disseminate it through NGIoT. But then we got presentations of use cases, and we've seen some of the IoT data challenges. We've seen, as I said during the workshop, right, a lot of, so these were, in three, all of them transport-related cases. One was considering traffic management in a cross-regional, cross-border context, whereas another use case was focused more on the ports. Mm-hmm. And finally, we had something which was about intelligent asset management and maintenance and fleet management at the same time. So in all of all these three cases, they highlighted, the challenges of sharing data in a way that guarantees data sovereignty, of course, the regulatory compliance, but also technical and semantic interoperability. The last one being also very important for the replicability of these solutions, because if you've got a data-driven solution, it turns out that it's quite difficult to replicate it, to reuse it in another environment where your data are really very different, and not only technically different in terms of formats, but also different in terms of semantics. The rest of the system cannot really work as such. So now it's there needs to be some split of responsibility to the different stakeholders, it seems, right? So some because every case is different, and every data set is different, and you cannot assume, as we said in our in the last use case, in the discussion of the last use case, you can not assume, for example, that a Tesla will provide you the same data as a BMW. But even within a BMW, different models, right, need result in different, machine learning models, in different data processing for getting the results of the asset management or of the fleet management. So the problem has a lot of degrees of heterogeneity, and I think one of best practice is by splitting concerns and solving part of these problems. For example, the data heterogeneity can be transferred to a problem of the original equipment manufacturer, right? And then also finding a way for stakeholders to be willing to share the data, because that's what we've seen. For example, in the port of Valencia, we learned that we cannot take it for granted that different port stakeholders are willing to share data among themselves, because there is always a business component, a confidentiality component on this, and even within the same port ecosystem, stakeholders are not willing to share data. So the projects have different approaches, different breakdowns of these data pipelines from the cloud to the edge. The solutions were all very interesting. They were working, but when it comes to reusability and to the replicability, it's still challenging if you cannot standardize the pipeline and the data set so that you seamlessly transfer it from one environment to another. So that was, the main takeaways of our discussion.
Thank you, John. Yes, it makes absolute sense. We also tackle the different stakeholders engagement in when using or not using open source, and how flexible our companies into falling into those protocols. But well, I think that would be it for us for today. I would like to thank everyone again for your presentations. The recording will be available for those who requested with no problem, and we will be compiling the paper and sharing it with you for your feedback on the main takeaways based on what went through in both sessions. So thank you very much again. We'll be in touch, and hope you all have a very good afternoon.